Hello and welcome to Cinema to the Letter. This episode, it's that egregious film known as Mars Needs Moms. On Cinema to the Letter, we break down the very nature of cinema, letter by letter. For each episode of a season topic, we cover 6 films that fit a C for classic, I for indie, N for new, E for egregious, M for masterpiece, and A for atypical. Because who doesn't love an acronym, am I right? I am Thomas, and I'm just so tired of these Martians taking our moms!
Oh, hello, I'm Bryan, and I can't believe that I agreed to do this movie. I don't understand, why did we do this, Thomas?
We'll get into it. We'll get into some of the planning stuff for the egregious pick. But as you might be able to hear, we're not the only ones here, because we have a guest with us today. He is the host of the Films for Breakfast podcast, amongst other podcasts he's done over the years, Mr. Adam Sirdoreus. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. In almost any other scenario, I would say it's a pleasure to be here. And it still is, but I am a little bit picky with that because of the movie that we're discussing.
Look, we all have battle scars from this one, but yeah. So Adam, we invited you on because you're a big animation person. So I'm curious, what is your general kind of like animation history? Why do you love the medium, and what makes a bad animated movie to you?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. So I mean, yeah, I've just always really like gravitated towards animated films. And even like at a young age, I think I more so appreciated like the more ambitious animated films. Like even ones that I didn't even think were particularly good. Like I remember one that I really liked as a kid just because the animation was different. It was like Titan AE, if you guys know that
Yes.
movie. Not, and I've rewatched it since. Not a very good movie, but it is kind of cool. Like the animation is unique. And
Yes.
like when I was younger, like one of my favorite Disney movies was Treasure Planet, just because it was so different than like
Yeah.
anything else in their catalog. So yeah, I mean, I just have a very, extensive history of loving animation. And as for what makes a bad animated movie, okay, so if we're gonna specifically talk about animated movies for families or children, I really hate animated movies that feel the need to talk down to kids, like that feel the need to either over explain. They don't trust their younger audiences to just pick up on simple storytelling, show don't tell rules, that feel the need to spoon feed you every bit of exposition or feeling or anything at any given moment. That's one of many things I think can make a bad animated movie. Also, maybe even just whatever this looks like.
Right. We'll get into that. But yeah, because Bryan, we both were like, when we were planning the season, the E for Egregious was one where we definitely wanted to avoid like a more typical bad animated kids movie. Because like I agree with you, Adam. Like we've talked about this many times on the show in terms of just like children's entertainment, family entertainment in general. Of like the talking down to an audience is like deeply like troublesome and enraging. I think to the both of us as well. Just that it's like they don't trust kids to really like be able to process the movie at all, and it just becomes so much about like really spoon feeding them the themes and all this other stuff. Um, I'll say that I don't think Mars Needs Moms feels extremely typical of a bad kids movie. There's elements that are, but I would say there's some unique elements. I think particularly as we mentioned, the style has a unique, interesting place in animation history, and might be the worst example of an already kind of bad uh kind of style of animation. I don't know. You would agree with that though, Bryan, right? That we had that kind of struggle with planning the season for that.
Yeah, because I think I agree with you, Adam. Like, it is my biggest problem with a lot of like even animated movies that like I don't know. I think of a recent example of a movie that a lot of people really liked, and there's elements of it I liked, but like something like the Super Mario Brothers that like is still kind of talking down to its audience in some ways, or like that movie has the problem where they have like they play like 80s pop songs to like please the adults in the audience. I also really hate that when you can tell that a movie is like, here's one for the adults who are taking the kids to this animated movie. But with a lot of like, yeah, there's a lot of just like really generically bad animated movies we could have done as well. This movie, like, as bad as it is, I think is so it is kind of fascinating in how it is bad. And also, yes, the animation style goes into that, and we'll get into a bit of mocap and why like I have a slight soft spot for mocap, but again, we'll get into that. I was also realizing as I was watching this that this is our third week in a row doing technically a Disney movie, even though it was not. Image movers and
not quite, because Nim is not a Disney movie. Very decidedly.
Oh,
not
that's
a
true.
Disney
That's
movie.
true.
But yeah, our first episode of the season was Fantasia, and then we did Turning Red last time, and now we're doing Marcy's Songs. Yeah, I didn't even remember this was a Disney movie until we were kind of doing, because we wanted to also avoid doing too many Disney movies. And I guess this is technically a Disney movie, but it's an interesting corner of Disney where like Fantasia, they try out all the time, despite it being a flop initially, a very iconic piece of Disney media. And then Turning Red was incredibly beloved when it came out, and I think still is like gaining sort of a cult appeal. Versus Marcene's Moms has been like hidden under like a rug. Marcene's Moms is like something that they really do not want you to find just on Disney Plus.
It is on. I was gonna say it is on Disney Plus though.
I gotta say, I was genuinely shocked to see that it was on there, because there's so many movies like it that like what you're saying, like where they try to bury it and they just straight up don't make it available on Disney Plus. So I was pleasantly surprised to see that it was accessible and that I didn't have to like rent it on YouTube for like $2.99 or something.
That's true. You would have felt much worse if you had to spend money on this movie.
It would have been a half star. Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk a bit about like, so the thing with Mars Needs Moms, which is our E for Egregious pick for today, is that it's part of Image Movers, which was this company that still kind of exists as the production company for Robert Zemeckis, who we've talked about previously, including on the Patreon, we'll be talking about Back to the Future and all that and stuff. So Zemeckis is a curious figure that we've talked about previously, but with Image Movers animation in particular, he really wanted to excel the mocap style, which he'd introduced in Polar Express in 2004, and then he had done Beowulf and A Christmas Carol in 2009. And the Polar Express is a weird kind of thing. I don't know, maybe it's because like I'm at a bit older than you two, but I know that like for certain people who were a bit younger, even as young as like my younger sisters, like Polar Express is like this iconic Christmas classic kind of thing, which like as someone who was close to teenager by that point, I was kind of baffled by it. I was like, what the fuck's talking about? This is like an abomination, and I won't fucking stand by it. But yeah, it's weird how like that particular movie is so insanely popular. And then the other two, like Beowulf, I think did alright, and Christmas Carol, like, ended up like kind of, it opened very well, I remember, but it kind of like really dissipated with time. And then Mars Needs Moms comes out and bombs so ridiculously bad that like that whole style of animation is basically done, aside from like Tintin, which is separate, but has a very similar aesthetic and a similar kind of animation style. So yeah, how do you feel about this style, Adam?
I have a complicated history with it because I don't hate it. Like in the grand scheme of things, I'm glad you brought up the Polar Express, because that God, it was 2004, I believe. Yeah,
yes.
It was 2004. So I was 7 when that movie came out, and so kind of a perfect age to watch that movie, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I, being a Florida native, I don't know if this is outside of anywhere but Orange County, Florida, but they always in elementary school had Polar Express Day at my school, like where it was like the day before Christmas break, and you would like they would just play it on the TV in every classroom, and you would have hot cocoa and wear your pajamas.
Excuse me, I don't believe it's hot cocoa. I think it's a different name.
Oh, right? Hot chocolate.
hot. We got it.
Yes.
And the teachers danced. No, but it was So it kind of held a special place in my heart. Even like here in Florida, like not to do all the Orlando propaganda right at the top, but they back at SeaWorld, they did an overlay of their like Antarctica ride, and they made it a what do you call it, like a like the basically the like roller coaster sequence in that movie, they put it on that during the holiday season. So I had a lot of fond memories with the Polar Express. um and I feel like my fondness for that movie kind of like softened the blow for like how almost objectively scary everything about the animation style looks.
Right.
Because I mean, Christmas Carol also comes to mind, Zemeckis' other film, and I I have not seen that since theaters. I remember liking it when I was 12. I don't know how it holds up. So yeah, I have a like I objectively think it looks bad, but I don't hate it just because I it really kind of popped off when I was like young and impressionable towards like animation.
Brian, is that a similar relationship with you?
I was gonna say you unlocked like one of my core memories. Like I also remember very specifically having Polar Express Day. Yeah, like
Yep. Hmm.
the hot chocolate, and it was always on. And I did have that kind of like fondness for the movie, and I still to this day meet people where, because I revisited it like a couple years ago, because I was like, let's confront this childhood like trauma, and it's terrible. It's like it's a horrible movie. And but I will still meet people who are around my age and are like, oh my god, that movie's a masterpiece, and I'm like, you haven't seen it as an
Yeah.
adult, like, you know. And yeah, I mean, same with a Christmas Carol. It just really not good. But I also have a fondness for the kind of mocap style. I think because of playing video games mainly, and
Mm.
you know, one of my kind of defenses of mocap is that, like, especially around this time, the technology just isn't there. It's kind of there in some places, and then in other places it is really, really bad. But you know, like, the way that a lot of video games are like now, like AAA video games are made now, is like mocap. And you look at something like, you know, I'm playing Death Stranding 2 right now, and you know, it has Norman Reedus and Lea Seydoux and Elle Fanning and all these actors, and it looks amazing. You know, it looks just absolutely incredible. And so it's this weird kind of situation where, like, again, this animation style is completely dead, but like, you could give it another attempt now. It would take a really long time. Obviously, like, video games take a really long time to make, but like, the technology has gotten way, way better. And I think the problem with like Zemeckis, with the Zemeckis kind of image mover stuff, is kind of the thing that like Spielberg really solves with Tintin, which is that you need to really have like a lot of expressive character designs that are really like just different and not very like human.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, even like in the Polar Express, there's like the kind of thing that I like about animation is like, you it's things you can't do with a camera. And there's that like really like, it's a really forced like way of showing this, but like the scene with the ticket where it like flies out the window and it like
Mm.
does the whole like thing, and it's like, that scene's kind of dumb and whatever, but like, it is an example of like, this is something you just cannot do with a camera. And obviously Spielberg does a lot of that stuff in Tintin, where the camera is just moving, the camera, quote unquote, is just like floating in between all of these different like scenarios and situations. And I'm kind of nostalgic in a way for like the early 2000s CGI look. Like you mentioned, like Treasure Planet has a lot of that, like that kind of like early CGI look that I kind of have a fondness for. But I think, as we'll get into this, there's a kind of a reason why this animation style just kind of like is a no-go for like most people, understandably so, you know.
Right, especially because we're going to be talking about the nail in the coffin of that
Yeah.
entire concept pretty much today. But yeah, I think for me, with this motion capture style, which if you're unaware out there, motion capture is something that still exists to this day in terms of like, you know, the people who like put all the ping pong balls on like the big wetsuit kind of thing. You've seen that in behind the scenes stuff. That kind of like aesthetic is like it still exists. This technology is like advanced and grown with stuff like the Avatar movies is like the biggest example, probably.
Sure, yeah.
Also the Planet of the Apes franchise, stuff like that. But I think the key thing that those movies, along with, I agree with you, what Tintin recognized, is that like you have to have some kind of slight unreality to make that work. Because you're going off actual people's movements. The whole point of those ping pong balls is to map how every single movement is done for an individual performer and how it translates to the animated character. But, like, when you have it feel too kind of, like, close to human, like it is, I would say, in Polar Express and Christmas Carol, it just feels off. There's the classic, I believe, what was it, in 30 Rock? There's a great joke where one of the characters talks about, like, the uncanny valley. And it's just like, up here you got regular Tom Hanks, and down here you got Polar Express Tom Hanks. In terms of, like, how much you can, like, invest in something that looks close to human but isn't quite. And I think, like, Polar Express is very guilty of this. A Christmas Carol is also guilty of this. But even, like, Beowulf, which we haven't really talked about that much, and I would say by default is the best of those Zemeckis ones, they have a few characters where they actually take advantage of it. Like, I think the best motion capture character Zemeckis ever created was the version of Grendel, played by Crispin Glover in that movie. Because he has, like, human motions, but he's a monster man. And you've got Crispin Glover, who is one of the strangest actors of all time, doing inhuman things. So it makes that character feel more, like, vibrant and not, like, chained down to human kind of, restrictions as much as it is in, like, the other Zemeckis characters. And I think, to his credit, like, Zemeckis said this many times, like, I think it's a similar thing, like, Ang Lee has talked about this too, about, like, I was using this technology just in the hope of, like, other people can, like, do something with it. Like, I'm innovating here, and people can criticize me, but I want to be able to, like, introduce this technology into the world. And that had existed around the time, like, the Lord of the Rings movies were happening around the same time, the original ones, and Gollum, of course, was one of the bigger motion capture characters that really, like, blew the wide open. But that, I think he also has a similar thing where it's, like, people undercredit the fact that, like, despite the motion capture thing being, like, very much, like, the motions controlled by an individual performer, there are still animators doing stuff with, like, the face for Gollum, and even, like, the Caesar apes as well. So I think that's the big thing. It feels like that's not as big a factor with the Zemeckis movies. I'm sure it is, but just visually, it's like, I just see, like, you're just mapping a person's body, and I can see that's kind of Tom Hanks, but it's not.
I think that's true in all of these movies, like his mocap movies, but I think it's the most true with this one. Like, I think that issue kind of absolves with, what I mean, like with his other movies, but in this one, it is just like so lost in the slop of, like, whatever the hell they're going for aesthetically. Like, it is so unbelievably ugly. Like, when I tell you guys, I was fighting for my life this weekend finishing this movie. It was truly, and I told Thomas when he invited me on, he gave me a list, and credit where credit's due. I chose, I think, probably the worst one of the lineup, but
You did, yes.
yeah, so self-inflicted. I take full responsibility, but dear God, I mean, it just so bad.
And, like, I feel like this is another factor with the sort of, like, egregious animated movie where, when we talked about, like, Secret of NIMH, it was kind of like, and Fantasia, just, about, like, the length of animated movies, and, like, Fantasia's a little over 2 hours. Secret of NIMH is what, like 80 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
And, we talked about how it's like, well, obviously with animated movies, like, you often just can't afford, there's no time to make the movie longer. And I feel this so strongly that, like, a bad 90-minute animated movie just drags on so much. And this movie is only 88 minutes, but it feels so much longer for, like, a lot of the reasons that we'll get into.
Well, let's just get into it then. Let's get into Mars Needs Moms.
You didn't eat your broccoli. No broccoli, no TV. Milo, is that broccoli?
No, that's vomit, but I understand the confusion.
I told you to eat that.
You're not gonna make me eat it now, are you? That wasn't a good thing to say. I'm gonna go tell her I'm sorry.
Mom? Mom! Let her go!
Wait! Let me go! I'm in a spaceship!
This is
Welcome to Mars. My name is Gribble. This is Touquet. What's your handle?
Milo.
How about I call you my bro? Check it.
What is going on?
Fact is, Mars needs moms, so the aliens are stealing them from Earth to raise their own kids.
Who knew mothering was so hard?
So Mars Needs Moms came out on March 11th, 2011, from director Simon Wells, based on the book by Berkeley Brecht, who you might know from Bloom County, the comic strip. But yeah, Simon Wells is interesting because he is a director who mostly has done animation, and if you look at his career, I think you kind of see the weird sort of rise and fall of 2D animation at that particular time in the 90s, because like his career starts off with in fairness, he was an animator on Roger Rabbit, which was a big thing. He worked under Richard Williams, and we talked about Roger Rabbit previously, but he's a London animator who worked under Richard Williams a lot, has done a lot of great stuff. Even after like he stopped directing movies, he's been working a lot with like the Kung Fu Panda movies in particular. He was very heavily involved in the second one, and particularly doing like the storyboarding, the fight sequences, which that movie has great fight sequences, but his directorial career starts with Fievel Goes West, the Western-themed sequel to An American Tale, which notably has the final performance of Jimmy Stewart as Wiley Burp, the dog cowboy.
Wow.
All these things are true. Then he does We're Back, A Dinosaur Story, which is one of the most deranged movies of all time, I think. That's basically about a bunch of dinosaurs are kidnapped by a scientist who's created cereal that he feeds to them that makes them, like, sentient, being able to, like, talk in English and stuff. And then he takes them to modern-day New York, where they run into, like, a wise, street-tough kid and another little girl voiced by Yardley Smith, so it's just Lisa Simpson's voice. And then they get captured by an evil carnival barker who's the evil twin of the scientist. All these things also happen in this movie. And then he does Balto, which is a perfectly, like, when I think of, like, this career that we're going down right now is, like, prime, the kids need a VHS tape to distract them kind of movies, right? Like, that's what, these all feel like that kind of, Balto was, like, the king of that kind of movie. It's like, rainy day at school, teachers don't want to talk to you, put on Balto. It's perfectly inoffensive. And then notably, he steps out of animation in 2002 to do The Time Machine, the 2002 adaptation starring Guy Pearce of the H.G. Wells book, which, you might be asking, any kind of relation? Yes, Simon Wells is the great-grandson of H.G. Wells.
Oh, wow.
Writer of The Time Machine and The Invisible Man. So he's the ultimate Nepo baby, really, that he got to direct that Time Machine movie. Just really cashing in on his own fucking name.
Actually.
It's maybe the most unique example of a Nepo baby I've ever heard of. It's like, oh yeah, my great-granddad wrote the book this is based on.
That's nuts. That's a great, like, pull. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's especially the most interesting thing about that Time Machine movie, which is mostly very boring. The most interesting other thing about it is that he quit about, like, 3 weeks till production was gonna be done due to, like, exhaustion. He was, like, so exhausted, so they hired Gore Verbinski to finish that movie. What? And, like, there are certain bits where you can tell, because, like, in the Time Machine, there's a point, like, this is in the original movie and the book, he encounters these characters called Morlocks, who are, like, evil, kind of, like, you know, bestial characters that harass, like, the far distant future citizens that Guy Pearce is trying to help out. And a lot of those sequences just feel like Pirates of the Caribbean, like, oh, it's a mess, all the, like, pirate gang, like the Davy Jones bits. You can kind of see, like, the early version of that with some of those Morlock scenes in that movie. It's very interesting. That movie was a huge flop. And, but, oh, I'm sorry, I did skip over. He was one of the co-directors on Prince of Egypt, 98. Which, to be fair, he is a co-director on a couple of those other movies, like Fievel Goes West and We're Back, A Dinosaur Story. We talked about this, the weird animation director credits thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he also was involved in Prince of Egypt, then Time Machine, and then there's a long gap until Mars Needs Moms, and then he hasn't directed a movie since.
Wow. I think his filmography is very strange. I don't even remember Balto that much. Like, I know that it exists. I know that I have consumed it at some point in my life, but I could not tell you anything about it. I just saw Prince of Egypt for the first time like a few years ago. One of my very good friends who I used to like work with, I was the supervisor, he was the manager at our job. And I like one day was just like, can I leave like 30 minutes early because I just like want to leave and there was nothing going on at work. And he's like, I will. And we would always do this with each other. Like if I had a favor for him or he had a favor for me, we'd say, you can do this thing if you watch a movie that I tell you to watch. And he let me leave like 30 minutes early one day. He said, if you go watch Prince of Egypt this weekend. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And I honestly thought that movie was really good. It was really, really solid. Like just an epic telling of that story.
It's easily the best movie he has a director credit on.
That I do not think anyone on the planet will disagree with you on that.
I don't know. There's some weird Back at Dinosaur Stories fans that might object to that. And the thing is, like, I watched a bunch of these movies again recently, including like Balto. I have a similar thing to you, where like I know I saw that at like I said, at like a daycare or at a school when like it was raining outside, and I just watched it. And like all those movies have interesting like animation in them and interesting weird ideas. Like we're Back at Dinosaur Story, like I said, deranged movie, insane movie. But you can kind of track, especially like Five Goes West is like a very, you know, handsome production, even though it's a pretty dull, forgettable sequel. But like as those movies go along, like we're back and even Balto, those are all Amblin animation movies, which was literally a thing that Spielberg created just so like the animators and Roger Rabbit could have like something to do after that movie ended. And you can tell like Balto is like he's running out of money to like give animated movies money kind of thing, because like Balto, like it is so clear that like they don't have a lot of money and they're trying to make it work to some degree. And then yeah, Prince of Egypt at least is a bit bigger of like a rise, because it's like Jeffrey Katzenberg is in fuck you mode, and he's like, I'll show Disney, I'm gonna get a fucking Oscar before any of their animated movies get Oscars that aren't songs. So he's got that kind of like backing behind him. And then even like Mars Needs Moms is another one where it's like, this movie cost $150 million. He's got like Zemeckis behind him. He's got Disney behind him. There is so much money clearly on the screen with Mars Needs Moms in terms of just like the technology at the time. But I think like something like Balto, despite having like a lower budget, still feels at least like far more competent, and it has a bit more of like a, you know, underdog spirit literally to it, because of like the nature of the story, where it despite the limited animation, you can tell that at least there's a bit more care and like a bit more earnestness put into it, as opposed to feels like a movie where it's like burning money constantly. It's so expensive, and every single second is burning dollar bills in front of you. It's like the Joker in The Dark Knight. It's just like, we're burning all of this money in front of you just cuz.
What's interesting, because I haven't seen any of his other movies besides obviously Prince of Egypt, which is phenomenal, but looking at like his other kind of credits, like mainly storyboard, like as you said, story artist on a lot of like DreamWorks movies, which like it's my thing with DreamWorks for so long is that they have felt like they are these kind of cookie cutter kind of animation movies in a lot of ways. Like we'll talk about it with this movie, but like here's the cute little animal character, and like here's the comic relief character, here's like this, like the kind of like archetypes of a lot of these like children's animation movies. And I mean, it's all over like a lot of those 2000s era DreamWorks movies that I grew up with. And you just like really feel it with this movie, that but it also, again, it's also trying to do kind of a Pixar, like it's about something deeper, and like, yeah, it is just like a complete like abject failure. Like it really is. It's like, I remember when this movie was coming out, and I remember I saw the trailer for it, and just even like the title, I was like, I'm not seeing that. There's no way. That is like the worst title ever. It's yeah, like what?
Yeah. I mean, how do I start this? So I remember like when this was coming out, because yeah, it was like early 2011. And so I was like 13 at the time, and that was like purely Adam watches everything. That was the era of Adam will consume any piece of media that you put in front of him. And I stress that only to say I did not see this movie. I had no desire to see it, especially Disney movies, mind you. Like if it had a Disney logo in front of it, the chances of me seeing it like skyrocketed. I went to go see like Prince of Persia opening weekend, The Sorcerer's Apprentice opening weekend. Just like anything, any Disney slop you could imagine. Beverly Hills Chihuahua, I was there. You know what I mean? I was fully there. But I did not feel any, like, not even an inkling of an urge to watch this. How I remember this, I do not know. I remember seeing the teaser trailer for this in front of Tron Legacy.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Tron Legacy, much because it was very post Avatar movie, very much pushed in 3D. And I remember just sitting in the auditorium and the 3D trailer for this comes on. And I think it's like the last trailer before the movie starts because that's what they do. They play the last two trailers are usually from the same studio from the movie you're watching. And so the trailer's playing in 3D and my mom and me are just like, oh my God. Like we're both like just like audibly reacting to this of like, that looks so bad. And that was an era where not only did I watch everything, I coped with pretty much everything I watched. I found a reason for anything I watched to be at least decent, because I, at that point in my life, did not have a concept of the fact that I could waste my time and not like a movie. I had to justify every movie I liked. But with that, was like, if I see that, there's no chance I like it. So I'm just not going to see it. Cut to 14 years later, and Thomas presents me with the opportunity to revisit it, and I mean, what? Because that's one of the weird things with like, movies that you don't see as a kid, but it always like is in the back of your mind. Sometimes when the opportunity arises, like many years later, you're like, should I watch that stupid movie? Like, I know it's bad, but should I watch it just to say it? Because now I almost feel like, man, maybe I should have seen this in like a completely empty like AMC showing on opening weekend. Because I'm just curious how like audiences reacted to this movie at all. I cannot imagine, like, having watched it on Disney Plus this weekend, I cannot imagine it like an audience paying money out of pocket, first of all, to walk into an auditorium, let alone sit through all 80 something minutes of it. I cannot fathom that. It's just one of those movies where you cannot imagine it being satisfying for anyone involved.
Well, given it cost 150 million and made 39.2 million, I think you have your reaction.
Yeah,
that you've had. By the way, I love that you word that as presented an opportunity to you, as opposed to like, this feels more like I have like a trench coat and behind a back alley. I'm like, hey, West Mars needs moms.
It really was. It was just preying on me to like to give in. It was like the Green Goblin helmet, like coward. I just I just could not resist it.
I put out my wrist and go sleep after that.
It's also, I think for me, like, because I also saw the trailer for this a bunch, where it's like, I remember, like, as I was watching this, I remember specific parts of the trailer, and it is interesting. Yeah, these kind of like, I did not watch this, like, had no inkling to, but like, I remember parts of the trailer, and I feel like anytime, like, weirdly this movie comes up as a joke in conversation sometimes. Like, yeah, I remember Mars Needs Moms, and every time I hear the title, it's just like, they really named a movie that. It's so stupid. But like, it is just that like morbid curiosity of like something that came out when you were a kid, but like never got a chance to see. And like, I will say, like, I had to check as I was watching it what year this came out, because this feels like such a miscalculation of like this movie doesn't feel like it came out in 2011. It feels like it came out in like, obviously besides like the animation style, but like, this is some like 90s writing with how like broad it is, how absolutely like just basic some of like what it's saying is. Like, it does not feel like it's capturing the spirit of like, again, like even just thinking of like what Disney movies are coming out around this time. Like Toy Story 3 has just come out, Tangled has come out. Like, these are movies with a bit more like maturity and a bit more like, even just a bit more to say about like, obviously like the idea of like parenthood and like children. Disney's been doing it for decades, but like it's just such a miscalculation of so many different things. I mean, especially the humor, which we'll talk about. I wrote down some of the great jokes in this movie. Yeah, like I just it just does not feel contemporary, like, at all.
Yeah, I mean, I should note that in terms of my history with this movie, I was older than the two of you. I was in high school when this movie came out, so I saw the trailer and I'm like, not only disgusted, but also, why are you presenting this to me? Get this out of my fucking face. But I do remember when this came out around the time, and I felt kind of this weird thing where it was kind of in the middle. Like you mentioned, like Tron Legacy, and we've talked about this before with when we did Tomorrowland a few years ago. That like this is during that period in Disney where, in their very gender binary way, are trying to appeal to boys. Like they really want to appeal to like, oh, we need like the cash from like having young boys like see our movies. This feels like it's trying to like it's part of that camp, which is weird because like this is around the time they buy Marvel. I think it's in between them buying Marvel and them buying Star Wars, where that doesn't become a factor anymore. And it feels definitely like this is like an example of that. And I even felt that when I was watching, like they're really trying to get like little boys to like watch this movie. And I don't think it's working. Clearly, from the two of you, it did not work.
That's another thing, like where, because like we say that we don't like when like movies, like just the movies themselves talk down to audiences. I also feel like kids just like with marketing know when they're like being targeted for like, you know, like when like for example, like I don't know if you'd watch like a Nickelodeon show as a kid and there'd just be like a really obnoxious Michael Bay Transformers TV spot and it would just be like, here's Bumblebee, and it's like, okay, like relax, like I get it, I know you want.
I'm already on board. They're cars that transform, Michael.
Yeah,
you don't have to.
I'm like, you don't have to oversell me here, all right? Like, I'm already there. My mom has already bought the tickets on movietickets.com. We're good. Like, don't oversell me. I definitely feel that with this movie because even like just, and you're right, Bryan. Like, there's so much of it that feels, the best way I could describe it is that it feels like one of those scripts that got blacklisted for like 10 plus years, like, you know, or even just one, not even blacklisted, but just directors like Zemeckis are notorious to do this, where they hold on a script because the technology is quote unquote not there. You could very well probably win the argument and say it still was not there when they made this, but so I wouldn't even be surprised to find out that they wrote this forever ago, or even conceptually had the idea for it forever ago, and then just pulled the trigger on it like way later, because it's so much of it just it feels so like 90s and even 80s in this way that like it just tries to spoon feed you like the most basic of information. Like I can tolerate a little bit of like, okay, this is like an overtly complicated theme or idea, like divorce or something, you know what I mean? Like, so we may have to like kind of address it a little more head on than we would in like a movie for adults. But this movie, just like as something as simple as like a kid saying sorry to his mom, like it's not just like him like having a frustrating look on his face and like, you know, getting out of bed and like, you know, showing an animation, like he has to like talk to his cat and say, I feel bad that I talked to my mom like that. I need to go apologize to her. Like it is so unbelievably like just so trite and like just so bad on every level.
And like, yeah, like we you know, a movie that like, yeah, this movie has such like basic things to say about that relationship, which we'll get into as we get into the plot, but like on this idea of like this movie just feeling so condescending to its audience, both like adult and children. Like we talked about this last week, but just to like bring it up because it's kind of relevant here, like Elio, the new Pixar movie, is a way better version of some of this type of the same like themes and the same kind of like ideas in some ways of like, you know, connecting, of like appreciating not just like your mother, but like your loved ones around you. But that is a movie that is like, again, has a lot of existential ideas and thoughts, and actually is like another sin I think this movie commits as a sci-fi movie. It is bad. Like the designs for everything, like it's just ugly and generic. And it is interesting that like this movie comes out and then a year later John Carter comes out, which is also set on Mars and is not a perfect movie by any means.
And
but
I
like,
could 100% believe the reason that movie's not called John Carter of Mars is because this movie bombed for Disney.
1,000,000,000%.
yeah, which is a problem with that movie. Like the fact that it's called John Carter, you're like, what? Why would you just call it John Carter? But even that movie, as flawed as it is, feels more ambitious in how it's like trying to depict this kind of like alien technology and alien kind of thing. And it's just something that this movie just like, again, apart from it like looking horrible and whatever, like, you know me, Thomas, like as a sci-fi person, I could at least appreciate a movie that had some cool gadgets, that had some cool like designs and spaceship designs and stuff, and it doesn't have that at all.
No, yeah, and I think it's interesting because like we were talking about like, oh, the kind of history of like, oh, did they hold on this? Like I said, this was based on like a children's book from like a classic comic book strip artist, and I feel like this seems like it would be like, because that's the formula that like Zemeckis went for with like the Polar Express, because that's based on the Chris Van Allsburg, I believe, book. It has like a similar kind of aesthetic to it, where it's like here's like a big picture spread and then like some writing on. Mars Needs Moms is a similar thing from what I've gleaned of it. And I'm like, I think this premise works much better as like a children's book than it does like a 90-minute movie, on any level. Just because like with that you can like suspend whatever disbelief, and there's not like as much investment in it as opposed to like this movie, where especially the animation style is not cartoony like it is in that book, and it has to like, it feels more grounded because we have the mocap style. I think that really contrasts poorly. I think if this were more at least like kind of goofy in its animation, and like even if it was CG, I think it would still, I think, be slightly more tolerable than it is here. Which the basic sort of plot of this movie is we follow our young protagonist, who's a 9-year-old boy named what's his name? What's his fucker's little name?
Milo. Yeah.
Milo. Yeah, Milo is this young boy who's a little brat who doesn't really who constantly talks back to his mom, tries to put his broccoli inside the plant and nearly poisons the cat at a certain point. And his mom, played by Joan Cusack, a criminally wasted Joan Cusack, is like, you have to go up to your room, I'm so upset with you. And like we were mentioning earlier, the boy's like, oh yeah, I guess, I shouldn't have done it, that's bad. I shouldn't have said that to my mom, I need to go apologize to her. And right at that moment, she's in her bedroom getting kidnapped by aliens. The aliens have kidnapped his mom, brought her onto this giant ship. He follows after them, and manages to sneak on and gets on the ship and arrives on Mars, where it turns out there is alien life there, and it's a matriarchal society that has casted out its men into literally like the garbage dumps, and mainly raises children on machines in their kind of like Apple Store looking facility. And Milo is stuck in that garbage area with like all the male aliens, and also Gribble, who is this human man played by Dan Fogler that has been on Mars, it seems to be, for a couple decades, and it still talks like a kid, though still acts like a small child. And yeah, they gotta try and get his mom out of there on Mars.
Because they need them.
Right, because those... One thing right off the bat I want to say, I mentioned Joan Cusack criminally wasted in this movie. Despite the fact this movie has mom in the title, weird that like the mom character doesn't have any kind of subplot, right? Just feels weird that your movie's called Mars Needs Moms, and you don't have like Joan Cusack, I don't know, trying to like calm down a bunch of aliens or some bullshit, like a mom or some shit.
Yeah, give her a gun
something
or something.
To do. Right. Don't have her literally asleep the whole fucking movie.
I'm an advocate for any movie that gives Joan Cusack a gun, so I can agree with that. I think
that's true. Adam's Family Values. Did it happen in School of Rock? I can't remember, but yeah, it feels like a weird choice there, especially when like we have so much focus on this Milo kid, who I should mention, he's voiced by a guy named Seth Dusky, a little kid, but his mocap was done by Seth Green, who you might know from Buffy, amongst other things, and also including Robot Chicken, because apparently in the original version of this movie that was almost going to be released, it was Seth Green doing the voice. You can hear his voice in the trailer, I think, for this movie, and it sounds like if you ever watch an episode of Robot Chicken and Seth Green does a kid voice, it's that voice. And it's
Yeah,
like,
they do. They do bloopers at the end of this where not bloopers, but like behind the scenes where they show you how they did the mocap.
Yeah.
And you can hear Seth Green. And why? Again, this movie is made of bad decisions, but like, why would you I understand, like, you don't want to have to necessarily, well, I say, like, you wouldn't want to put a kid through, like, having to do mocap and stuff, but, like, again, look at, like, I'm going to go to video games again, but, like, look at the God of War 2018 video game, which has, I forget that kid's name, but he's the kid from, he was in, like, mid-90s.
Oh gosh, I know exactly your... God,
Sonny Soljic.
Yes.
Yeah, and, like, he is amazing in that game and gives a great performance, and so why would you have Seth Green do this performance is really baffling. And there's times where, like, with mocap especially, you can really kind of tell around the eyes, like, you know, like, even with Tintin, like, with the villain, like, you can tell, like, oh, that's Daniel Craig, like, a little bit around the eyes. They try to use, like, connected to the actor, and there's times that is just, it's really uncanny, and it looks a bit like Seth Green, because this kid, yeah, is supposed to be 9, but has the face of, like, a 28-year-old. It's so weird. Lot of the time.
Weird. It feels like they're trying to kind of approximate what Seth Green looks like if you've ever seen him as a kid actor, because he was a kid actor in, like, the 80s and 90s. I recently watched this movie called Big Business with Bette Midler and Lily Tomlin, and he's, like, Bette Midler's son in the movie. And he looks incredibly like this kid, except, like you're mentioning, they're trying to mix, like, that, trying to approximate that, but also they're doing it with, like, 30-something-year-old Seth Green's, like, mocap. And it doesn't, so like, weird. Connect at all. Even the way the kid moves doesn't feel like a kid. It feels like a grown man. It's a weird decision. And I would say this, I should mention, I've seen this movie before, because on archive.org, they had the version that is just Seth Green's voice, which was weirdly built into the Blu-ray. And I just was like, I need to see what this nightmare is, because it was during the pandemic, and I was like very
dark times.
Very dark times. Didn't have much to do, so I was just like, fuck it, sure, I'll watch this version. And I would say, if you have to watch a version of Mars Needs Moms, that might be the one, just because it's much funnier to hear Seth Green doing, once again, his Robot Chicken kid voice for 88 minutes. It's such, that would have at least made, like, that feels kind of like the Sonic the Hedgehog redesign decision, where I'm like, objectively probably better that you change that, but at the same time I kind of want to see the whole movie like that.
I will say I took notes during this movie, which I don't do for every movie that I do on a pod. But like literally 5 minutes in, I just felt compelled to pull up the notes app on my phone and just like type away at what I was experiencing. And my fourth note is just in all caps: Seth Green is Milo, and then 10 question marks after that. I am so glad you cleared up that he only did the mocap and not the voice in the theatrical cut, because I was so confused at how the hell they got that from him. It doesn't make it any less jarring when you're watching what Bryan mentioned, like the little behind the scenes during the credits. It is so bizarre, and it makes me rethink my stance of this being a interesting medium, because I just seeing like behind the curtain of it, it just looks so like I'm so sorry, but like watching Joan Cusack act off Seth Green while he's pretending to be a child is just so like there's not even words in the human language to convey what it makes me feel, and it's not positive. That's all I can tell you. And like you summed it up perfectly. He's such a brat in this movie. Like, and you can have unlikable kids lead a movie. That's not an issue. There's some of the best animated films are about kids who are quote unquote unlikable. And even if they don't even learn like a huge lesson, you can still paint a film around a kid who is, by all, like, on paper, a bad kid. But this kid just, like, there's just nothing there aside from the bad stuff. There is nothing compelling, interesting. You don't even like try to rope his like badness into the screenplay aside from a very simple like, oh, you need to take out the trash, you need to do the broccoli, and that just goes to Brian's point about like how it feels so like from a different era because it's just so like, okay, like what are the two most basic things a kid doesn't want to do? Take out the trash and eat broccoli. Really, that's all we're fucking doing. Like that's it.
Yeah.
That's the entire extent of it. It's ridiculous.
And like Zemeckis, like I liked here.
I did too.
He is not sort of like hip with like the times. You know, he is a boomer.
Zemeckis is merely a producer.
And no, I know. I'm giving him the blame for this, though.
No. I should mention, by the way, that this is the only like writing credit Simon Wells has on a movie in terms of like a full screenplay credit, and it's one of the only two movies he has like a solo directing credit on besides Balto. So I'm also gonna firmly put a lot of that blame on him.
No, 100%. But like, it goes to I think what like that sort of feeling where like. Again, this is a movie coming out in 2011, and the most interesting, what you can kind of come up with is that, like, the kid doesn't want to take the trash out. It's, like, 5 feet from, like, the door, dude, first off. And then I was really, because I was so uninterested in, like, the actual plot that I was trying to figure out, like, the lore of this movie. We find out that, like, as you said, Gribble... his mother was taken as well, and with his backstory, which is so fascinating, we find out that like he was like the perfect kid basically, and his mom was great and everything, and that's why they took her. And again, like, I'm not saying that Joan Cusack's character is like a bad mom, but this kid sucks. Like he is like such a brat. Like most of the movie is him just going like to Gribble or to the key character, which we'll get to, like, oh, I just need to find my mom. We need to go. Like, there's no, like, characterization. There's nothing that, like, defines him. He isn't even, like, a precocious kid.
Yeah, there's no precocious, there's no interest that he has. Like, the only interest he shows at all is he gets a call from his dad, who's like, sorry, Slugger, I can't get back in time to see the zombie movie. My flight got canceled because of the weather. And he's, like, upset about it. Like any, like, reasonable child would be. Like, how dare you? I need to go see the zombies or whatever. Like, he's, like, a horror fan, so it's like, does that have any kind of, like, actual, like, interesting imprint on him? You could, you could, like, elaborate on that and make him, like, some kind of, like, weird, outcasted kid. Like, even, you mentioned Elio earlier. That's even a movie where, we should mention, since we last recorded, a lot has come out about allegedly Elio being very tampered with by Pixar. And some of the stuff about particularly the main character having a lot of his queerness that was originally supposed to be in there taken out. But even then, that kid, at least, like, Elio still feels at least a bit more like a character, even with so much of that stripped out. It's not a very elaborate character, but it's, like, something you can cling on to.
It's just so bare bones. Like, even in that scene that you're describing, like, where, you know, the dad calls him, says, oh, hey, we can't, you know, my flight got delayed, can't go to the movie. And then the mom says... oh, okay, well, like, if you eat your vegetables, we can, like, rent another zombie movie on demand. And, like, okay, like, sure, like, you're laying the groundwork for him to break the rules, but then it immediately cuts the very next scene is that. And not even, like, an Edgar Wright-esque, like, kind of choppy, like, oh, very quick cut, let's get to the joke. No, like, just in a very much like, this is an 80-minute movie. We have a studio mandate, and we have to have this be under 90 minutes. So it is the next scene, not because it should be the next scene, but because it is the next scene. And just immediately, like, she set the terms. If you eat the broccoli, you can watch the movie. He just blatantly does not eat the broccoli and then acts surprised when she doesn't let him do the thing. Like, it's so simple writing. And this is what I'm talking about when it comes down to, like, talking down to an audience of just, like, treating kids like they're that stupid. It just feels so disingenuous. And it's not, like, in tone with anything. It's not, like, part of a joke. It's not part of, like, a deeper theme. Like there's nothing here other than pure laziness. It feels like just like a pure like we need to put the most basic caricature of virtually every character in the film. The only one that I will say has a little bit of depth is Gribble, because I do agree, Brian, like his story is at least a little bit interesting. Like I think the film doesn't explore it very well, but like it has like the seeds there of like
100%. Yeah.
of what it would be like to be abandoned on Mars, and then also I think it would in a much better film serve as a cautionary tale to Milo of what he should not become, is this guy who never grows up, and eventually finds that at the end of all that misses his mom. Like that's if the film had a good writer, you would explore that. The film kind of does, only in the sense that it doesn't abandon it. But would you call that exploring it? I wouldn't.
Well,
No,
like,
no, I want to bring this up because you mentioned like this whole backstory for the Gribble character. I also found incredibly compelling as an idea. That's so much more interesting if you have like, because they established that like Gribble as a kid, like he was the best kid ever. He did everything his mom told him. He cleaned up the house, did his chores, everything else, and that's the reason that the Martians like found her specifically and wanted to use her discipline, is what they say, right? Like that they dissolve these like women and bring in their like disciplinary traits or something like that and feed that into like their nanny bots or some shit. And we see like this whole backstory where this kid like sees his mom evaporate in front of him, and it's like that's a really compelling thing, especially of like, oh, I did everything I was supposed to and that got my mom evaporated, so now I'm gonna be like a man-child who does not follow any rules. There's, like you mentioned, the seed of a really interesting story there. And this movie just decides, like, no, let's go with the bratty kid who has, like, literally, he's just an asshole. And yet his mom gets captured anyway.
Yeah.
Like, that contradicts the rule, too, where it's like, what does the mom do then? Why are you kidnapping Joan Cusack?
This is, I thought this the entire time where they, like, at the beginning we see, like, the Martians, like, watching over Earth. And they see, like, Joan Cusack, like, tell him to throw the garbage away. They just see that and they're like, perfect, mom. All right, let's take her. Which is, yeah, it just like makes no sense. And then like in a better written movie, like you guys are saying, like the Gribble character would also be like, I don't know, this kind of weird idea of like the Ready Player One idea of just like someone who has spent their entire life just not growing up, because he's making like 80s movie references. Like his introduction is like he does like the Darth Vader voice and stuff like that, and so it's like,
and he asks the kid the call signs, and he's like, "Oh, are you Iceman?
have you seen
Maverick?"
Top Gun?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, yeah, and like again, in a better movie, I think it would kind of maybe address like again the dangers of not moving on from just these like very like old kind of pop culture references and stuff like that, but also the problem with that character is he is so badly written and so annoying.
Yeah.
Because you've literally made a man-child. And I do think like the facial capture for Gribble is the best looking in the movie. Like there are times in this movie where it like would do a close-up on him and I'm like, okay, the technology wasn't there, but it was like almost there for this character. Like, you can tell it's where they put a lot of the money. But again, they don't explore his story, and he's just like really, really annoying, like constantly. And also, they give him this very weird, like quasi romance with the Martian girl, which is just like,
we'll talk about it.
What the fuck is that?
The gender roles in this movie, even beyond the moms, is like fucking weird.
I mean,
to like such a weird degree. But I want to go back to Gribble because I should mention he's played by Dan Fogler, who people might recognize from like around this time. They were really trying to push him as sort of like a surrogate Jack Black. Kind of like we have Jack Black at home kind of thing, where it's like in like movies like Good Luck Chuck, Balls of Fury. You want to talk about the man-child, like Fanboys? I think one of the most disgusting movies that's ever existed.
Take Me Home Tonight is a deep cut.
Take Me Home Tonight's another example of that. Yes, exactly. They were really trying hard, and for a while, I really hated that guy because of that. It's like, don't try and sell me like Timu Jack Black. How fucking dare you do that to this? I love Jack Black. Don't do this to me. And I think that guy's proven himself to be a much better dramatic actor than he ever is a comedic actor. Like, he was good on a couple episodes of Hannibal. He was even in, as much as we don't like talking about this franchise, he's kind of like the best thing about, especially that first Fantastic Beasts movie. He like really stands out as like the most entertaining thing about that first one in particular. But I think like that it helps that like he has a very expressive face. And I think he kind of like fits in the motion capture thing a bit better in terms of like he's got like the wide-eyed expression. But yeah, I agree with you. The whole character is like still awful and such a like black hole of comedic relief on every conceivable level. And also such an asshole with like, I'm gonna put this child in danger at one point. But I still get to like implied fuck this like alien girl by like the end of this movie. It's so vile. This whole character to me.
I mean, that entire like little subplot with him and what's her name, Key. Yeah. No, absolutely not. On every level. Like,
It's very weird.
Get it away from me. I don't want it. I don't want any part of this. I feel offended that you put it on Disney Plus. I may write a letter.
Children could see this.
They need to put a disclaimer in front of this movie.
That's
Disney
true.
Plus.
It just feels wrong. Like, I don't know. Like, just every part of it just feels so like because on the one hand, the movie's trying to sell you like this guy he has a lot of growing up to do. He's in no capacity to be like leading the charge. Like he's in a very weird spot in life, and he has to make a choice in order to grow up and move on. And yet also there's a love interest in him, which feels like a completely like just screenwriting 101, like the wrong choice for this movie. In a movie full of wrong choices, it just added to the list of like wrong choices, because having like a Martian who is on his side is probably like a positive thing, like just in terms of animation. Like I think that is a good idea, but making her a love interest is really bizarre. And also just like character in general, like how the film handles her, how the film handles her is like, even aside from being a love interest, like just her like observing the leader. I don't even know if that character has a name, like the leader of the
supervisor.
Pack. The supervisor. Yeah, right. Yeah, great, amazing. See, like just...
one of the great iconic Disney villains, supervisor, right there with Maleficent, Gaston, the supervisor.
Oh my god, I saw a little bit of a tangent. I saw Ben Schwartz last night, live in Orlando, and he was doing improv, and one of the bits was that from the audience he pulled like someone that married a Disney princess they met at Disney, and they were just like listing the most obscure Disney villains of all time, because one of them, the comedians on stage, was like raised super religious, so has historically not seen a lot of Disney animated movies. So he just wouldn't know something as simple as like Gaston or Chip, and they'd ask him to like tell them about the character, and he just wouldn't know anything about it. So I would love for him to find out about Mars Needs Moms and see if he knows anything about the supervisor.
Could you tell me about the supervisor for Mars Needs Moms?
It's just so unbelievably bad. And now that I'm looking at Letterboxd, Mindy Sterling as the supervisor, who, I mean, God, where do you want to start? She's in so many things. Most notably, I'd say Austin Powers.
Yeah, she's Frau from the Austin Powers movies,
Yeah. And also for Nickelodeon kids, she is in iCarly, Francine Briggs. She was very reoccurring on iCarly. So very much all part of my childhood. So I'm kind of surprised that she has a nothing role in this one.
Yeah, that whole supervisor character is such a weird thing where it's like we want to have a villain for the movie, but she's barely in the movie. And like we just occasionally cut to her like mean mugging, and then she finally does something at the last fucking second with like having the gun out and like trying to kill the two of them. It is such like, it's like you mentioned, there's so many like conventional writing decisions, but there are just as many decisions of like why. What makes that compelling a choice? Like for like any of these characters to do or anything. It is constantly a weird, like very on the rails movie, and then it's off the rails but incompetent. So it's just like, where are we at this point?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those weird ones where it's unlike anything you've ever seen. in terms of like animation and just how purely ugly It is. And in fact, my very first note is very simply, in case you were wondering if I am a like a good note writer that like is um that writes out thoughtful responses to what I'm experiencing. No, my first note is I just simply fucking hate how everything looks right now. Um and I it's so simplistic on like a narrative and like screenplay level, yet is so bizarrely complex and like needlessly so for such paper thin material. At least like what I mentioned earlier, like a Titan AE or something. Like at least like within that kind of bizarre story, they find a use of that kind of like weird animation style. Right. But here it just like all the like little like locations are just so like flat, like all the aliens are so uninteresting, all the ships, all the like gadgets, all the even like when towards the end when they're on Mars, like when he's like on the like Mars surface, it just looks so like ugly, and it does not take advantage of what I feel like one of the very few advantages you can have with the medium is making these spaces feel like very lived. And that's one thing I really like about the Polar Express is that you feel like you're there. You know, you feel like you're at
Yeah.
Santa's workshop. You feel like you're at these places. These places are so desolate and empty and just have nothing to them.
It has that kind of like I mentioned earlier, just how bad of a sci-fi movie this is, but like it does have that feeling that a lot of sci-fi movies have around this time of like I think Thomas you mentioned earlier, like the Apple Store aesthetic, where
Yeah.
everything is like white and silver and glass and it's all very clean and everything. But it has no identity. Like, you know, like a movie like Tron Legacy, which came out the year before, like I love that movie, and I think that aesthetic really works for something like Tron, and it's one of the reasons I really love that movie. But they also don't take any advantage of like what you can do with mocap in terms of like, again, like the way that Zemeckis in Polar Express. Wow, I can't believe I'm defending the Polar Express, and this is how bad this movie is. But like those like scenes where like Tom Hanks like punches the ticket, and the quote unquote camera can like go right up in there to show you each individual like hole punch, and it's like something that you could never do with a camera. You could obviously do an animation, but it's different with mocap, and there's none of any of that here really. There's none of that kind of like fun kind of trickery that you can get with mocap, and none of the like the technology is very interesting. The little like what's the little like robot called, like Tom Two Cat or Tomcat or something?
Yeah.
He's like kind of cute, I guess, but like is just like it's a very Disney like thing of like this is the animal sidekick, but he's a robot here. Like so many of the decisions here feel so generic, and even like the alien designs are really poor. And when we get to like the males are like kind of weirdly problematic. I don't know how much we want to get into that.
No, there's like right, but I think that alien design thing, I completely agree with you, Brian, because like watching it, one, I think facially, quite frankly, like, especially the main character, the way I described it in my notes was, it looks like somebody tried to draw Amanda Seyfried from Memory in the Dark. That's like, this is like what like the face looks like, but then even like the decisions on like every single like part of the anatomy feels like it's very much tied to, we have a human that is doing the motions for this. We can't have like a really weird alien design with like multiple arms and shit. So we're stuck to like a humanoid form. So how do we make that different? It's like, oh, they have like weird gazelle legs, and like they have like the wide eyes, like we mentioned, like kind of the far apart eyes, no nose, and also I have to really emphasize on how much I hate this. They have like very defined asses, and there's a lot of close-ups of them, and I'm like, why are we doing this? Get this out of my face.
Like it wouldn't have to be brought up if they didn't make a point to like just do it. You know what I mean? Like if they didn't have to animate it, like it's such a bizarre choice.
The weird like childbearing hips, but also a giant thigh gap. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
What is this design?
Yeah, like it's so weird to like do that plus make her love interest, because like and also like it feels like very low-hanging fruit to like, okay, if you want to like give yourself some grace and like say, oh no, he like fell in love with her because she's like very capable and he's like very technologically advanced and he like admires the culture. No, I'm pretty sure he just likes her because he finds her hot. I'm pretty sure that's exactly it. He just has like a weird like Martian like fetish, and that's what he's into. And meanwhile, she kind of likes him, I guess, because she and like that's the thing. The movie doesn't really clarify if she likes Gribble or if she's just so fascinated with humans that she's just kind of clinging on to him. So
Right, I think that's the problem. I
undercuts
think that's 100% what it is, and that makes it so much worse because like her whole fascination with him is that he blushes when he's around her, which also leads credence to like your thing of like he wants to fuck this alien lady, and she's like, "Oh, you blushed. I'm fascinated with you. I have to know more about you." It's not a dynamic that I really want to see like resolve in like, oh, those two crazy kids they got together. No. These kids need to be separated from each other. Gribble needs to go back to Earth, and she needs to go back to Mars. This needs to not be a thing.
And like with the key character, like they set up that thing where she like stumbles upon like some show from the 70s or something.
Oh no, 60s.
Like
it's very
60s,
hippie
yeah. And so like I don't know, that idea of like, oh, she becomes interested in like human culture and that kind of like shows her a different life. Like it's a very it's very tried and true like writing.
I don't know, when have we ever had like a female redhead protagonist in an animated Disney movie really become obsessed with human culture? I don't think that's ever happened before then.
Yeah, but like that is something. It's some kind of like, I mean, it's just weird because she just starts saying like a bunch of like 60s like slang. Like she's like, "I'm not the fuzz, man," and you're like, "What?"
I hated that.
Yep.
But like, again, that's something. And so there's a lot of like these nuggets here that like on paper are like something, like we talked about with like Gribble's like whole backstory. Like, oh, tell me more about that, please. Or with the supervisor. Such a stupid name. The like the sort of like lore that like, oh no, Mars, they actually did have moms on Mars, but something happened, and then the supervisor kind of like hid that from everyone, and it's like, wait, whoa, why? What's the story here? What's the like, what? Tell me more about that. Dig deeper into that, and it's like, no. The movie does not do that. It is not interested in going deeper into any of those things, but there's just these like tiny ideas in this movie that could be something if the writing was just a little bit more specific and wanted to dig a little deeper into some of this stuff.
Yeah, we need to talk about this fucking like weird history with Mars in this movie. Because like the reveal is that they find like some ancient ruins, and it's like, oh wait, so we did used to have not just moms, but a traditional family unit of like they see a cave drawing of like a male, a female, and a baby. So we're trying to say like, oh, we need like moms for specifically like the ability, like we mentioned, like the whole thing is the moms are there because of like the discipline angle. And we've casted out like the men onto like the garbage dumps, only use them for whatever procreation purposes they need, and then we dump them literally in the dump. And then so this whole movie, especially with like the key character who's like the only like female Martian that's on their side, it's about basically trying to take a matriarchy and completely dissolve it because it's become sterile and cold and there's no feeling. And all that the supervisor even has to say is like, oh, the males would do nothing. They would just dance around and not do much of anything. They provide nothing to society. And it just feels weirdly kind of incel-ish. Where it's just like, we got, like, ladies can't be in charge. Well, no, we need, like, traditional family values and bullshit. Like, what are you trying to say with this?
It's very, like, boomer. Like,
yes.
It like, and also just the idea that, like, when they're explaining the idea of, like, yeah, we take the discipline part of the mother, but the rest of it, whatever, we can just throw it away. Like, weirdly implying that, like, women are only mothers when they become mothers. Like, they're not people still. They just have, like, their only job is to be a mother is just such a, like, is such a backwards, like, way of thinking that this movie has.
And our one independent female character in the movie is like, I want to make sure this society comes back to where it was before.
Gosh. It's so bad. It's so bad.
Yeah.
It's such a bad screenplay. Like on every level, it breaks like every like rule of like show don't tell. Like just it's so blatantly like eager to do the worst possible thing it can do. I do find it very, how do I put this? I do find it very like of a weird like 2010 2011 like era where it does feel like these movies were only made in a time like that, because I know, Brian, you said like it kind of feels like almost 90s in a sense, but there was an era where it feels like these weird sci-fi movies were just an appropriate gamble for these studios, like where like, okay, yeah, like I feel like if you can put this on like a pizza rolls like bag and like advertise it, we can at least get like 50 million like opening weekend or something. Like this was like in the last stretch of when these movies were like kind of marketable to kids. I don't really like, outside of movie theaters, I don't remember seeing like any TV spots or anything for this movie when it was coming out. It's just such a bizarre like, who is this for? I wish I could like time travel back to 2011 and like literally like do like what Grace Randolph used to do and like interview people like after movies. I'd be fascinated to see if she has a one for this.
It's just
Like,
a picture of her in front of an empty theater and no one is talking to her.
I remember because I used to like watch that religiously when I was like 13. And anytime that did happen, because there was a few movies where that happened to them, and they just bought a ticket and then reviewed it themselves, which I thought was pretty admirable. So I'll have to see if they actually did it for for Mars Needs Moms. But I would love to like find both one, a person that saw this movie, and maybe even a person who liked it, because I'm so curious how this played. Although like you said earlier, Thomas, like it doesn't seem like it played at all because it bombed historically.
Yes, it bombed historically. Like I said, collapsed image movers. We were going to have a Yellow Submarine remake that Zemeckis was going to make in that style.
Oh, dude, I am so
That-
glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of weird test footage that's come out in the last couple years of that movie, which would have been a nightmare. But I don't know, probably better than this movie, because like you guys were talking about with like the Zemeckis mocap movies, like that whole thing of like the tickets going around, or there's a lot of this in A Christmas Carol too, where it's like, let's have the theme park section of this for the 3D. Like, I loathe that shit. That's the main reason I hated those fucking movies. Like the bit in A Christmas Carol where Scrooge becomes tiny, and then he like runs around like in the Ghost of Christmas Future bit, and he like goes into a jar and all this other bullshit. I was just like, why are we doing this? Why are you wasting my time with this, Zemeckis? At the same time, that at least has an interest in like, let me show off what the animation can do. Let me show off like why I want to do this particular thing. And there's none of that real ambition there, like you guys were mentioning. It's all like big open spaces, not a lot of like even interacting with like other characters. There are like 5 characters, I think, in this movie that have speaking lines.
Yeah, yeah, I mean that's like a like even like in the more simple scenes in a Polar Express, like it's like I even think back to like I am kind of a defender of that movie. I kind of like it. But I think back to like the opening of that movie where he's in his bedroom and he's hearing his parents, and he like looks through the keyhole and he's like looking at his parents through that. And that's I just feel like that's something you can really only do in animation, yet it feels like dynamic because of the mocap. So like even if you're like not like, even to like give like these people more grace yet also criticize them in the same breath, like even if you do simple spaces, um you can still do interesting stuff within that. You know what I mean? Like you can still do that. And yet they still found the laziest approach. Like this movie came out 7 years after Polar Express did. And it just feels worse. Like it feels so much flatter. I would say the people look uglier and more just two-dimensional. It looks so unbelievably bad in every way. Even just like the way the camera moves in the Polar Express, like the way that whole like kind of roller coaster sequence, the you know, because like the ticket goes from the Hawk to the to the wolves, and then it goes back
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
train with the wind. Like, there's some interesting stuff going on there, like technology or not, like just that he's doing as a filmmaker. With this, there's like I genuinely like I try to like find a positive in any movie that I watch. I cannot think of a single, like not even like a sequence. I'm even saying like a moment, a frame where I felt like, oh, that was an interesting choice. That was an interesting shot. That was an interesting anything. There is nothing here as
I
far as
think
any of that.
I think there's one moment that I think is utilizing this thing that we're talking about. Again, it's also even more compounded by the fact that this came out the same year as Tintin. And
Yeah.
again, that is directed by Steven Spielberg, who is one of the greatest like image makers of all time and knows how to use a camera, real or digital, like to create these incredibly dynamic shots. But the one moment in this movie is when he's like locked in that like closet thing and he takes off the helmet, which has a little like screen kind of eye piece, and he like puts it down and the camera kind of zooms in to see that like Gribble's getting like arrested by the Martians, and it like zooms in really close to that like screen. Like, I'm being very generous here. It is the best example of this. It's still not very good and not very dynamic, but that is a moment where I'm like, oh, okay, this is what you can do with mocap. This is what you can kind of do. You couldn't do that with a camera. But yeah, there's nothing like that. And it is like, again, as much as I am critical of the Polar Express, like Zemeckis at least has that sort of instinct of like you said, Thomas, when you're talking about like his goals of like, I want to innovate. I want to just like mess around with this technology and see what I can do. And, no disrespect, well, some disrespect to Simon Wells, but not the greatest director of this kind of stuff. And yeah, it just looks very flat from that perspective. And like, again, like it doesn't have this kind of like, I don't want to call it tactility necessarily because it's all digital, but like some kind of tactility, some kind of like sense of like touch and like, oh, you can really feel, again, like I always love that image of the punch holes through the ticket in Polar Express because it's like, oh, it's so satisfying. And there's nothing like that in this movie at all. And it's such a shame.
I mean, the one semi-positive I can maybe give this movie is the fact that John Powell can't make a bad score. That's probably the biggest thing. It's fine. It's like not it's not offensive. It's admittingly like at this time you can tell he's just like, I just did How to Train Your Dragon. I'm not gonna like devote all my time into this. But it's like serviceable and fine, which is better than the movie really has on any level. Yeah. I think another thing was sort of in terms of like the flatness, I think that's really noticeable if you watch his Time Machine. Because that's classic example of like animation director doing live action and he doesn't know how to like place actors very well. That is still there with Mars Needs Moms, like nearly a decade after that movie. It feels like an animation director kind of trying to put the best elements of like animation and live action together, and it just ends up being shitty. It just like it just ends up being like the worst of both worlds on nearly every level. And I think the only other thing where it tries to kind of take advantage of the mocap is with something that Bryan, I think you should go into about the male characters, the male Martians who like they're trying to like sort of have like, I think they got like gymnasts or something like that to kind of like do their movements because they're a lot more crouched. They're kind of more primitive as characters. Is that maybe why you think it's a bit problematic, Bryan?
Well, my main question is while watching it, why do they all have dreads? And why are they coded as like quote unquote native, basically?
Yeah.
Again, the movie's very broad, so there's like it's not specific in any single way, but like it feels like it's gesturing towards racism in a really big way. And it just is so weird. That on top of like what you were talking about earlier, where it's like, yeah, we just threw them all down there because they weren't useful to us, and like I don't know why they designed them that way. It's just so strange to me and makes it even like so much worse. Like the scene where he goes down like the chute and he like finds like a group of them and is trying to like gesture of like, have you seen my mom? She vacuums for me. she does this for me. And he does that like 5 more times, and it's just like, dude, one, after like 2 attempts, I don't think they would understand you. I think you should understand that. But 2, again, yes, the weird like they are like a native tribe kind of thing is just really rubbed me the wrong way. And then that scene later where they're on the ship and they let them out of like the cages or the cells or whatever, and they say, "Who let the dogs out?" Which,
Yep.
like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yep.
We're making a Baja Men reference in
In
the year
2011.
What? Ugh.
That's egregious, first of all. It's so
Hey,
bad.
appropriate. Yeah.
I also had the same same mental note, I should say. I didn't physically write it down. But I had the same thought while watching it, just like, oh, that's a choice. That's pretty much all I went to. I was like, this is a choice. Honestly, everything in this movie is just such a like bizarre choice. You know what? If I have to say one nice thing about a movie, that's my goal in life, is to, even the worst movies I see, I try to say one nice thing. I did genuinely laugh at him tripping over the Mars rover and saying, "What idiot left that there?"
Yeah,
I
that's
thought
kinda
that was
funny.
actually kind of a funny like side
Yeah,
gag.
yeah.
That's maybe it. That might be my only like nice thing I could say about it. But hey, I
No,
did it.
And like, there's just these weird attempts at comedy. I mentioned like Who Let the Dogs Out. He makes a joke about the Wii, which
Oh
again,
my God, yeah.
very like 2011. Like I forget the line where he's like, "I mainly do it on the Wii," or whatever.
Oh yeah, it's like he's about to use like some martial arts moves. He's like, I'm a martial arts expert on the Wii, at least.
yeah,
Yeah.
like that is really bad. All of like the pop culture references with Gribble, I think, are like really, really bad. But there's the one where he says like he's part of like Reagan's like space program or something.
Or
Like that's
astronaut,
why it's called
like,
the Red
astronauts
Planet
program or something.
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
what is this? Like, just so many attempts at like humor that just don't work like at all. And again, that is another thing I think with a lot of like bad animated movies, especially for kids, is just kind of like adults trying to write jokes that kids might find funny, but just like a lot of this movie just completely missing the mark on like what it is that kids find funny or anything like that. And yeah, oh man.
Yeah, it's honestly impressive because, you know, if I go out like with my friends or something, when my buddy has a few drinks, I think that's the worst ratio, like a hitting a batting ratio of someone trying to nail a joke that just will not land. And
Mhm.
yet you watch Mars Needs Moms and you realize that ratio can be like a lot lower, and it like literally approximately tries to fire a joke every 10 seconds or 20 seconds or 30 seconds, and it just it never lands, not once. It is and not only does it not land, it finds a way to be more annoying each joke. It's honestly impressive how annoying it gets after a while. All due respect to the kid that is probably my age now, so I don't know why I'm calling him a kid, but he all due respect to the kid that voices Milo, terrible line delivery for all those jokes, just such a bratty
Yeah.
like little demeanor. I hated it. But even like, I don't know, like little I mean, God, it doesn't go to the talent of the performer. I think it's just more so the writing and everything, and just the animation style. Even like Joan Cusack, like she has some jokes early on in the movie where, like, on paper they're not like bad jokes, but the movie just like has such a stilted a tone to it that it just comes off as awkward. Like it feels weird to watch these characters and the animation style that they have to be making jokes. Like it just does not fit whatsoever. So it's just very bizarre in that way to have these characters cracking jokes while you're just kind of perplexed at what you're looking at, because you're not at a capacity to find anything funny while they look like this.
Yeah.
What a weird movie.
Yeah, I'll tell you the nadir to me of the jokes is the bit when Keith shows up and Dan Fogler says, "Oh my Sharona."
Oh my God.
Maybe the most bankrupt a joke has ever been in a movie.
I think I genuinely like at that part, like just like paused it, left the room for like 5 minutes, and I came back.
You went outside, you looked
I
at the
just-
sunset, you contemplated your life choices.
It was somewhere around that. Yeah, it was like around the scene where they first met, where I was just like, okay, I'm gonna take a breather. I'll reconvene. I'll come back.
You wrote a letter to your loved one, my dearest. I don't know if I'll ever return from Mars Needs Moms.
Yeah, yeah.
God.
She's so lucky she like slept in that morning, because if she came downstairs and saw me watching this bullshit, she would have been like, "What the fuck are you watching?"
Pack up your stuff, get out of here. How dare you watch this here?
In fact, tonight I told her, I'm like, "Hey, I'm recording the pod tonight." She's like, "Wait, what pod again?" And I was like, "Oh, for Mars Needs Moms." And she's like, "What?" She's like, "Is that it?" And I just had to like tell her what Mars Needs Mom, and she like cut me off like halfway through, and she was like, okay." She's like, I'm done.
A normal response that any adult would have to that statement.
Yeah. And like the thing with like, you're right, it tries to jam pack these like jokes in the movie constantly. But then like I mentioned, like really wants to have like this like emotionality of like this kid realizing that he loves his mom, but like I think of the scene where he's like running away after him and Key like first meet, and she's kind of like, why are you looking for your mom? Or like, what's a mom? And he's like, well, she does this for me, and he's basically like, she does everything for me, so that's why I need her. But then he kind of like realizes like, I love her. And I'm like, first off, again, a movie is just literally telling you what it's about, like telling you its themes. But by the end of this movie, which is so bad, the sort of final emotional climax, which there's so many things there's so many problems I have with it. Most of which is like it is going for this Pixar sort of like real emotional gut punch when you think that Joan Cusack has died after she like sacrifices herself, which again, it is a very literal like moms give us the air that we breathe kind of like gesture. But just the like very simple like space thing where like, again, not that I want this movie to like go full like Total Recall and have like her head like,
oh, I think I do.
I was like
she would have looked much better if that happened. Both of them would have, if like, because you're forgetting the fact, like, with this climax, like, the whole thing that happens is, like, they have to try and save her from, like, the big apparatus where, like, oh, the sun's gonna come up and it's gonna evaporate her or whatever. So they have to go over to Joan Cusack, who is, like, in a jersey and her underwear, and which is also just a weird choice. I know, like, she was in bed when that happened, but, like,
So
such a
bizarre.
weird choice to have her throughout the climax like that. But, yeah, the kid ends up getting inside of that pod. It's like, hey, I need to get you out of here, Mom, and here's a helmet, and here's a helmet for me. And they both try and, like, bounce around Mars. And Mindy Sterling, the supervisor, our favorite villain character, ends up shooting at the kid, and he ends up tripping over and cracks his helmet. So that point, he's like, oh, is the kid gonna die? And then she puts the helmet on him, and it's like, oh, the sacrifice thing. They do two fucking, like, Disney death things back to back. That happens all the time in these Disney movies. Like, oh no, a character's dead? Oh no, what's gonna happen? Oh, they're fine, don't worry about it. They do it back to back within, like, 1 minute. Like, how fucking dare you do this? And try and get some emotionality out of me with that? Fuck off.
Yeah, I love when movies like this like try to like throw in like last minute stakes, and it just does not land whatsoever. And honestly, even in the best Disney movies, like you're saying, like even when they throw that at you, you're like, the kid's not fucking dying. Shut up.
Yep.
But in this one, it feels like especially like, dude, kill him. I don't give a shit. Like, do it. I
this
dare
kid
you.
sucks. He's a brat. Like,
Honestly, I'll give it a positive rating if he does die. But no, like it's so, because honestly, weirdly, this movie does feel like you mentioned earlier, Brian, like that like subplot with or like the backstory for Gribble's character of like his mom like dying, and it honestly kind of like a little bit of dark material there, where that kind of does open the door at least a little bit for some kind of character death, or even like a darker turn in the third act of something, even just like a little bit weirder, some like just some anything. No, it does not explore anything. And like, not to jump all the way to the end, but like one of my other notes was that I love how when they get back to Earth, nothing, no reaction, no sense of they've been on a journey. Like the dad gets home, nothing to them. Like I love how, he like has the like little like laser gun thing, and the mom is like acting like she's trying to hide it from her husband. And it's like, why would you hide this? I would be telling the FBI. I would be like freaking the fuck out that I just got like abducted by Martians. Like why? Like I have no clue like why this is now a secret.
Well, I mean, look, these kids, sure, they just got back from Alien Planet, but Tom Everett Scott had his flight canceled, they come back. He's gone through a lot. He can know about the aliens in the morning,
I mean, yeah, like, just, they get home and they're like, all right, let's just go home. And she has, like, this sigh, like, they just got back from, like, vacation. And I'm like, there is a secret civilization on Mars that has existed for generations.
You walked on Mars in a jersey and your underwear like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. It makes no sense, and it really just feels like the movie has like no stakes whatsoever, and it is so bad. And same with like the wrap up that they have with like the supervisor, where he like shows them the like what would you call it, like the
cave paintings or whatever.
Yeah, the cave painting. And she's like, see, we need the nuclear family unit. And then they're like, yeah, you're bad, let's put you in jail. And that's it. That's the entire resolution that we get. And like, man,
excuse me, over the credits they show that she has to change a little youngling baby's diaper. And then she gets peed on.
God.
Right. A very original thing I've never seen in a kid's movie, especially.
Yeah. A lot of things in this movie are unfortunately things I've never seen before, and I wish they remained that way.
There's also the stakes during that climax of like the spaceship. They're like, oh, you have 60 seconds to get back to the spaceship. I can't control it. And then the spaceship goes off, and it's like, oh, I guess they're stuck there. And then, no, just kidding, it's back, and we're going to go on it.
Yeah. It's I hate fake. I mean, like I said earlier, I hate fake stakes. I hate when you just bring that up to, buy some time for the audience, because the best movies, they're organic. They build to like a natural like tension point with the audience, where you're like, you feel like a genuine, like, oh no, I really want this kid to get home with his mom. Like I really want Gribble to get back to Earth. I really want
you really want him to fuck that alien lady.
That's you really want him to fucking just plow that alien lady. But like, no, it's so like, no, they don't build up to that at all. And it feels so like, I hate when movies feel so like they feel tired of themselves after a certain point. They feel exhausted by themselves. And it honestly, like, watching the credits, like behind the scene sizzle reel thing, where it feels like you could see almost the exhaustion on these performers' faces, like as they're mocapping these sequences. I can only imagine that, like, after not only going through that entire process, let alone animating it, directing it, cutting, editing, music, and like all the post-production process, I can only imagine that by that point, yeah, I'm sure you're done. I'm sure you're over it. I wouldn't be happy about it either if I had to spend all this money, all these resources, get these performances, just to have this be my final product. I too would be upset. I too would want to get to the finish line as quick as possible.
Which is also weird when you consider, like, when you hear people, at least, in EPK kind of footage, which is always like sus to some degree. Like, when you hear like Tom Hanks talk about the Polar Express, he found to be like, oh, it was a freeing thing that I was able to like do this and do like, so many different like kind of spins on the character and stuff like that. Being able to like, because in that movie, it's another example where Tom Hanks did the mocap even for like the little kid character, like the main hero boy character.
Yeah.
He also did the motion capture for like that kid. And there's kind of like the interesting idea of, oh, you could have like an adult play a kid or vice versa or whatever with like the bounds of technology. But like you mentioned, I think when you have someone like Simon Wells who like doesn't have a lot of experience directing actors, I think that becomes more exhausting.
Again, and Dan Fogler like is the quote unquote best performance in this because he is very expressive, but it is like it's a sign of just bad direction that like these actors are not given, because you, again, as we found out with this year with Tintin and a lot of like video game stuff that has come out, like, you know, like stuff like The Last of Us, like if you direct mocap stuff well, it looks incredible. And like, of course, like everyone fucking cried at the beginning of The Last of Us and so many parts of that game. Like if you direct it well, it can be good. And like with the whole like adult playing a child, like you look at what Sigourney Weaver did for Avatar: Way of Water.
Yep.
Where like she's playing a 14-year-old and you're like, on paper that's just like, what? But in the movie it's kind of an incredible performance and like again is very freeing and allows her to do so many different things. But it is so obvious that it's someone here who doesn't have the experience, doesn't have the kind of like expertise to really navigate this well. And yeah, it's really unfortunate.
And not just all that, but also even just the additional thing of like this technology, like only what before him, like Peter Jackson, Robert Zemeckis, and Steven Spielberg were like dealing with this.
Right.
And it's like, Simon Wells, you do it now. This technology that like few people have ever used at this point. And you're like,
It's a good advocation for like gatekeeping. Like sometimes it's for the best, I think.
It also is a thing of like how different mocap acting must, like, I imagine feels for a lot of people. And even nowadays, like I just watched a video with Norman Reedus talking about Death Stranding where he was like, yeah, it's different. Like it's very weird and different. And I'm like, but again, with that, yeah, you have someone like Hideo Kojima who is a fucking maniac and, you know, knows how to, like, is a man of cinema, like understands that kind of thing. And I feel like now it is becoming a bit more, as you have like actors do a lot of like not just Hollywood actors but like professional like actors doing mocap for video games and stuff, like it's becoming a bit more streamlined and it's becoming a bit more like not easier to do, but like we understand it a bit more. And at this time it just like it wasn't quite there yet.
Well, you know, I'm curious now because like we mentioned, after this bombed and then Tintin didn't do extremely well when it came out, we did not get sadly the trilogy that was promised to us of Peter Jackson and Steven Spielberg swapping off.
Hey, don't say that. I'm still waiting.
Me too, man.
You know, we can all dream.
Peter Jackson, he's gonna make the next one. He said he would.
He's too busy literally unextincting a bird right now to do that. I just love that. I saw an interview with him on Variety. He was just like, yeah, you know, I've been thinking of some scripts and stuff, and I did the Beatles stuff, but now I just want to make sure this bird gets out of extinction.
Good for him. You know
what? Sure. Yeah, let him do it. Look, those Hobbit movies completely ruined him. So let him do other shit. Sure, let him re-alive a bird. Sure, why not? But yeah, I think like that. So this technology is still in use, but like we haven't had a fully mocap animated movie since Tintin. So I'm curious, Adam. We kind of mentioned this previously of like, oh, you could potentially do it again. Where would you want to see like the full, just everyone's mocap, no human characters, no live action people? Like, what would you want to see out of that in the modern age?
That's a good question. I think, you know, that may be something that kind of like lends itself well to, I think, like a superhero genre. I even think something along the lines of like a horror film, like a straight up horror film. There have been like quasi family oriented horror films, wink wink to a movie I'll discuss later, but like I think you can also like do it almost like a Scanner Darkly with like Richard Linklater, where you truly make it like a bizarro total mind trip. But also I would just love to see well, I guess I was gonna say, I guess I would like to see how it like advances in a cinematic medium, but I know you're saying, Bryan, like where it feels like a lot of these video games are like truly tapping into that. I'm not a huge gamer, but I do I keep up like Naughty Dog and stuff like that. And I although I'm behind on the Death Stranding trend at the moment, I'm behind on that, even though I know it's incredible. I would just love to see like what it looks like nowadays. Like, has it evolved like in a cinematic medium, or would it just kind of be more of the same? Because I do think there's potential for it, and I hope maybe one day they revisit it. But it's also not something I like actively am rooting for, unless it's Tintin 2. In which case I would love to see that.
I really concur with the horror movie idea. I think particularly, like, everyone kept making that joke about the Polar Express. Like, they look like zombies. Like, do a zombie movie in mocap, I think would be very interesting.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing, where it's like we're taking advantage of the fact that this looks human but isn't quite. Like that kind of uncanny valley. Even something like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I think, could work that way.
That's a good one.
Where you take kind of advantage of, like, this person is close to human but not quite. There's something off about them.
That's good.
Yeah. I don't know. What would you want to see out of like an all mocap movie now, Bryan?
I mean, I'll echo Tintin 2. Like, please
of
do
course.
that. But like,
I also do a third signing on Tintin 2. 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Please, Peter. I think it just really works for either, ironic saying it for this movie, but like big sort of like sci-fi and or adventure kind of movies. I think it really lends itself to that. I think you can really have, like, if the character designs are really different, really stylish, not trying to be human, but using, I think, a lot of like human motion to kind of just make it a bit more physical. I think that's like what I would like to see. Because again, like a thing that I think it is weird, because I am kind of like of conflicting minds here. Where like I love like newer kind of technologies. Like, I'm a fan of high frame rate, and again, as someone who does play a lot of video games, like I really do like. I feel like the technology has gotten there, not just with like facial capture and stuff, but like with lighting. I think lighting has just gotten really, really, really good. If you like playing like PC games, like you just have like ray tracing and stuff like that, like just reflections and all that kind of stuff. And so I think I really like what you said, Adam, about a superhero movie doing this, because I think you can really get some really dynamic or really interesting stuff. I would say that, or even something that is tapping into that kind of like otherworldly, fantastical stuff. Like if there was something like, I'm not saying do a Dark Crystal mocap thing, but like something like that, where it's like we're doing something that is not on Earth. It is like another universe, basically. Like that's what I would like to see. And I think there's clearly not the appetite for it, but I'm always kind of curious, like, can someone bring it back in some capacity? I'll also say the same thing about like the zombie thing. Like, I think that's actually a really great idea, because it's fucking hard to get like 100 actors to go into zombie makeup for like for hours. But if you can do it in mocap and do it in animation, like that's kind of interesting. What can you do there? Like, I don't know. It's fascinating though.
First thing that comes to my mind, if you wanted to do like a superhero thing, like do like a Batman Beyond or something that just feels like kind of like surrealist. And because especially like if you're gonna do like because there were rumors of that being like another like animated, like almost Spider-Verse style animated movie. I think WB like scrapped it. I think that could really lend itself to like, especially with like Gotham City, like having to feel like a little more like lived in. Like you want those like spaces to feel like very like tangible, and like there's like a physical person there, even if it is animated. Like I feel like something like that would really lend itself to it. Yeah, just something like, or even honestly, like just a comic book adaptation, like not even necessarily superhero, like a graphic novel, like a Watchmen or like a Scott Pilgrim, like along those lines, where you are animating it, but you can do more with like adapting it as a comic book and that kind of like visual style, while also keeping like performances intact. I feel like could be very, very beneficial, because I think one reason that one of many, many, many reasons that I think Tintin is a much better movie than this, is that it kind of ditches that photorealistic attempt, especially with the characters that I think these movies try to do. Not that Dan Fogler looks identical to like to Gribble in this movie or anything, but I really do appreciate that like it's not about with Tintin for Jamie Bell to be Tintin. It's really just about does he match the character that we already made? We're not making the character around the actor. It's vice versa. We're getting the actor.
The biggest design change they change is like from the Hergé thing is like having the dot eyes as opposed to having like actual like eyes, which I think is like the exact amount they needed to change that, and that's it.
Absolutely, and I think I mean they even like poke fun at it greatly in the opening when he's getting painted.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think something like that would be great, where they, just double down on that, where you don't have to like make it photorealistic to like the actor playing that character. To go into the video game thing, I was just playing the Indiana Jones style Destiny game, and they don't try to make him look identical to Harrison Ford. Like he just looks like Indiana Jones, but he doesn't look anything like oh my god, the infamous actor who's in like every video game that plays Indiana Jones. I forgot his name.
Troy Baker.
Yes.
Well, I think voices Indiana Jones in that game.
Right.
Yes,
but,
exactly.
But they also don't try and like photo match like at the opening of Dial of Destiny either. Harrison Ford specifically.
But he looks more like just a caricature of like what Indiana, like if you close your eyes and saw Indiana Jones, like it wouldn't look quite like Harrison Ford, but it would look very close to him, and that's what I feel like that game really captures, is like it kind of like opens the doorway of it, the franchise slowly moving away from Harrison Ford, but not completely cutting ties. You know what I mean? Like that the character is a little bit bigger, like the iconography is bigger. And I think that is something that like I think motion capture can aspire to, where you can feel like it doesn't feel like it's trying to emulate a Troy Baker or like capture him and his essence and make him the new Indiana Jones, but it lends itself to like creating the aesthetic of what Indiana Jones is. So like if you adapted some like famous comic book and it has a very particular art style, you could have that be in the motion capture, but you just use the motion capture as a framework to make the movements more dynamic and tangible.
Well, we mentioned Tintin and you mentioned Scott Pilgrim, Adam. I'd love to see Edgar Wright do something with motion capture. I think he's the exact kind of filmmaker, who I think could really do interesting. Because Tintin has a lot of it. Like he co-wrote that, right? And you can kind of tell like he's taking advantage of like, well, we don't have the limitations of like the human like problems or anything like that. So I think he would be do a lot of interesting stuff. Even though I don't know if he'd be as compelled to do that. He feels kind of like he would be like, no, I'm fine, thank you. He'd be very polite and say no, thank you.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and like I want to make one more video game comparison that I just thought of because of the whole superhero comic book thing. Like the Guardians of the Galaxy game that came out a few years ago has amazing like mocap character work, and like it looks incredible, and the character design and stuff looks amazing, but also the environments are like really otherworldly, like some like really massive, insane looking like locations that like, again, you could like, James Gunn did a great job with those movies, but like that game has some like massive stuff that I think would also lend itself to that. Like I think scale and like spectacle really is the kind of like the thing where this kind of thing shines a lot. Like we talked about with Tintin, that scene with the tank sort of going down the hill and following like Tintin with like and the captain has like the rocket launcher and stuff, like that kind of stuff. It is interesting that the only directors who have been able to do it with, again, Zemeckis is kind of experimenting, but like the only directors who can do it are Robert Zemeckis, Peter Jackson, and Steven Spielberg. And it's like, that is a high bar. Like that's a high bar to clear for this. And it's one of the reasons this movie just doesn't work.
Yeah, a shame Simon Wells couldn't, like we said, kind of come up to that exact level, and it completely killed his directorial career. But let's go ahead and wrap up on Mars. We'll clearly have stopped talking about it in general. So Brian, while you kind of have the floor, go ahead and have your final thoughts on Mars Needs Moms, and also, is this the worst movie we've covered for the show?
I was just thinking this. The other competition would be something like Game of Death, but even that feels more like offensive to just the memory of Bruce Lee and like just completely like pissing on his grave.
Right.
And even like I think of like the episode we did about Wish Upon, the horror movie which we did with Siobhan.
Oh wow.
Which is fantastic. Like that movie is bad, but it is kind of that like so bad that you're like laughing with it kind of thing.
Incredibly
like,
entertaining bad movie.
Yeah, like this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Maybe like I'm not exaggerating. I wish I was, but because again, there's a lot of bad animated movies. Like we consider doing Food Fight, which I feel like is a very iconic bad animated movie.
One of the few times I've pitched something to you and you flat out were like, no, I'm not going to do this. I can't look at that movie.
I can't. I was like, I will not be able to finish this movie. But like, this had a budget. It was released by Disney. Like, this is maybe the worst, like, big release studio animated film ever, maybe that I have seen. Surely, like, it is such an abject failure. Like on every single count. Again, it fails to be about something about like how we all need to appreciate our mothers. It fails as a science fiction movie and just how generic it is. Like, I kind of like the like watch that Gribble gives him that has like the countdown thing. Like that looks kind of cool, I guess. The security people, they have like those helmets that are kind of like almost like I don't know, like they have like the kind of like really interesting design, I guess. But I'm being generous here. Like I really cannot find that many redeemable things about this movie, and as a little sad as I am, like I said about mocap just kind of dying because of this movie, it feels like the kind of thing that does kill a studio and an entire way of animation. Like it is really, really bad on a like minute to minute basis. Like there is just not a, you know, like Adam, you're talking about like at least saying one nice thing about a movie. Like I really don't think I can say anything nice about this movie. Like
I get it. Yeah.
Even like, oh, I didn't mention the tagline for this movie, which I don't know if you guys saw, but is "Mom needs a little space," which
Jesus Christ,
just really, really sums up like what this movie is. It is just like not just like a failure, but like a complete miscalculation of what mocap can do, what animation can do, and what kids and families enjoy in a movie, because it just doesn't work on any of those merits at all. I'm gonna say yes, it's the worst movie we've covered. Wow. So what an accomplishment.
Well, congrats. Within 58 episodes of this show, we finally found the worst one. Can't believe it. Now, Adam, why don't you talk about your new favorite movie, Marcy's Moms? Final thoughts on it?
I will say I was looking through Letterboxd to see if it was like my least favorite animated movie, because I sorted it by genre animation and then my personal lowest rating. It is in the bottom 3 animated movies I've ever rated at a 1 star, and it is alongside classics such as The Wild and Everybody's Hero or Everyone's Hero. I don't know if you guys remember that movie with the fucking.
That's the movie that Christopher Reeve has like a posthumous directing credit on, right?
Oh, is that? Oh my God, yeah.
I believe that. If it's the baseball movie, I believe that's it. Yes.
Yes.
That is a movie that I had on one of those like portable DVD players for some reason.
Dude, same. Yeah.
And that was the movie for some reason. I don't know why that was the one, but I remember watching it a ton on that portable DVD player.
Same. I remember we rented it at like Hollywood Video, and then my mom like really thought I liked it for some reason, and then she like bought it for me, and we just like had it. And it has always stuck with me for some reason since the day I saw it, was that the main character in a New York Yankee propaganda movie is his name is Yankee Irving. I think that's very funny. So I only reserve the 1 out of 5 rating for the most subtle and classic of animated films. Yeah, this just sucks shit. I don't know. Like it's so bad on every level. I hate the way everything looks and feels, and I hate the tone. It feels simultaneously old fashioned yet very cynical, and like it's too good to be earnest at the same time. Like it's that in a weird middle ground where it feels so juvenile yet weirdly boomer. Like it's so bizarre. Like I hate when movies are in that odd how do you do fellow kids kind of tone to it, and it just never breaks free of that. um it just feels so deeply cynical and misguided in every aspect of it. Now that I'm like looking at the stats in my letterbox of how low I have it rated in terms of other animated movies, this may be my like least favorite animated movie of all time, because now granted I haven't seen like films like, I don't know, like Food Fight or something that have come that
The
I know,
Emoji
like,
Movie.
the Emoji Movie, I've never seen that.
Right.
You know, like
That's up there for me.
I do typically try to only watch animated movies that if I'm not coming on a pod, like I am with you guys.
If we didn't give you the opportunity, like we did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I'm going out of my way to watch it, I'll only watch it if it's I think it has a chance of being good. So I think by default it has to be my like least favorite I've ever seen, because I think put The Wild above this maybe, and I think I would definitely put Everyone's Hero above this just because I love New York Yankee propaganda. So yeah, maybe thank you, I guess, for giving me my least favorite anime movie of all time. I appreciate that.
Well, that was my goal, and my work here is done. No, yeah, I mean, I did the same experiment. I'm looking here. There's only a couple animated movies that like I would rate lower, because I'd give this a 1 star on Letterboxd, and the only ones I've gotten like half-star quality to is, I talked about this earlier, The Pebble and the Penguin is one, where that's a movie that's like not complete. Like that, literally, the movie has like several points where it's just like, you didn't complete the animation on this.
Wow.
Stuff like that. I mean, there's stuff like that. There's even around the same time, there's like a couple that I would find like more offensive, like Cars 2 is the same year, and shortly after this is also The Lorax, which I find like loathsome for like multiple reasons. But yeah, I think this is pretty bottom barrel, and I think it's because like you mentioned that in the whole like Hello Fellow Kids thing. I always make this comparison of like Wish Upon, even I had this comparison of like the person in a boardroom with a cigar saying, "What do the kids like?" But this movie has that, but it seems like the only person who is that producer is Robert Zemeckis. Because, like I mentioned, like, oh, I don't have this, so you can't quite blame him, but that boomerism is very Zemeckis. Zemeckis is a very boomer filmmaker, for good and mostly ill. And I feel like that kind of translates with, like, Simon Wells, who collaborated with Zemeckis on a lot of stuff. Like I mentioned, Roger Rabbit. He also did a lot of production design stuff for, like, the Back to the Future sequels and stuff like that. And I think you can tell that, like, it seems like those two have, like, at least, like, a good working relationship. But when you get to, like, this point of, like, Zemeckis in full mocap mode, and how, like, that's around the time he really loses his way as a director, largely, you can see that kind of rub off on, like, a Simon Wells, who's, like, kind of put in this position of, like, you have to make, like, a movie out of Mars Needs Moms. You have to do that. And sadly, I don't think he was very up to the task. I think this is a very terrible movie. I think it's definitely, at the very least, one of the worst, like, movies that cost, like, $150 million to, like, be put out there. Because a lot of these other anime movies, like we mentioned, like, Balto and, like, The Pebble and the Penguin, they, like, ran out of money. There's a scrappiness where it's like, oh, they're trying so hard, but it's like they just don't have the resources to do it. This movie is wasted resources on every level. The animation style, some of the talented people that get in here, like, once again, Joan Cusack, national treasure Joan Cusack, you give nothing to do. How dare you? And then all the weird implications of the Mars universe, and even, like, the lack of real development for, like, the sci-fi world, like, the weird attempt at, like, a Martian language they do, which apparently was done by, like, they had people say different versions of basic, like, garbled words, and then they tried to build, like, a whole language, which is, like, so weird because the language is so barely used, and the key knows English instantaneously. So, like, why do we even have the translator device that he uses after a certain point? Why even bother with any of that? So many weird questions. It just is very much like a movie. Despite the amount of resources it has, it feels underbaked on, like, every single level. It's a shame it kind of killed mocap animation as, like, a full animation style. But at the same time, I get it. This feels like a kind of like a stake through the heart of that kind of movie.
It does. It feels like a eulogy.
Yeah.
A really bad eulogy, though.
Awful.
Like if someone went to your funeral and, like, spit on your grave.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then get going.
Set your grave on fire and
Set
then
insulted your relatives that were there right to their faces.
Yeah, it's pretty damning. It really is because I mean, as we talked about it, it feels like a viable medium. There are definitely merits to it. It's just definitely not showcased here, is all I can say. Any final like word on it, on why this is a medium that's worthy of respect and the art form and everything. Nothing to be found here. Any Disney exec that was overseeing Image Movers, I can't say I blame them for pulling the plug here because it is just, it's so bad on every level. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I feel like after this movie came out, it like, I mean, I know Avatar was really like the setting off point for this, but I think this was in production around the time Avatar came out, or
Right,
somewhere.
because Avatar is like 2009. Even later this year is Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Right.
yeah.
So I feel like if they kind of passed the baton from like, okay, we can evolve past, making just mocap movies and just have movies with mocap. And so I guess thank you, Mars Needs Moms. We because of you we have Andy Serkis and Rise of the Planet of the Apes. But so that's kind of interesting, I guess, that it, one thing died, but then a whole other like side of things evolved, because like
That's true.
Arceus, I would even say like Brolin as Thanos. Like there's some really good
Right.
stuff.
sure.
Yeah.
Or even like Bradley Cooper and as Rocket is like one of the great sort of like mocap performances
absolutely.
in recent memory. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's weird. I guess the way to say it is like Marzine's Moms is like the eulogy, and then Tintin is like a posthumous work you discovered like in a drawer, and it's like a beautiful masterwork, and it's like, we can never have another.
Yeah.
We can never have another again.
Yeah.
It's very, very sweet, yeah. But let's talk about some other movies on our segment Between the Lines. So on every episode, myself and Bryan, and the guest, if they so choose, will recommend another film that either is like another option for, like in this case, E for egregious animation, just talk about, a bad movie, or, have a tangentially related one, maybe something that we would recommend watching instead of Mars Needs Moms, perhaps. Bryan, you're going first. What's your recommendation?
Yeah. Recommendation. Yeah, so I've recently been watching the Resident Evil movies, and it has gotten me down this rabbit hole of thinking about video game adaptations, and I'm going to recommend one from 2001, Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, which is not mocap but is CG, it's computer animation, directed by Hironobu Sakaguchi, who worked on many of Final Fantasy games, and is such a fascinating product. It is the only Final Fantasy movie to be released that is not based on like a game. Like they release like a sequel to Final Fantasy VII. I think there's like prequels to Final Fantasy 15 and stuff, but this is a completely separate story that has nothing to do with any other Final Fantasy game, and is a mostly science fiction movie, though it tries to have this kind of fantastical element to it. I don't know how much of the plot I really want to get into, because if you wanted more of that kind of lore that Mars Needs Moms does not have, this movie has so much of it. Very basic to describe the plot of it. It's set on Earth in, I believe, the 2050s, if I remember correctly, as a group of scientists are trying to uncover and collect the 8 spirits of the planet, and there are some evil monsters called the Phantoms that have laid waste to the Earth, and there is one person who is the last hope for humanity, and this movie has an insane cast. It has Alec Baldwin, Ving Rhames, Steve Buscemi, Donald Sutherland, James Woods, Keith David. Like, it has a huge Hollywood cast, and it is quite bad. It is, but as I was saying earlier, I have a real kind of nostalgia for this kind of like PlayStation 2 era graphics, especially like I always loved when in that PlayStation 2 era, those kind of like really unique looking like CG cutscenes that you would get, and at the time, you were like, oh my god, this looks photorealistic basically, and you watch them now and they're not very good, but like there is something kind of weirdly expressive and weirdly kind of interesting looking about a lot of this stuff. And I will say that like this movie came out in 2001 and it looks better than Mars Needs Moms. Like 100%. I think it still has a lot of that kind of uncanny valley effect, but it really does have an interesting look to it. It has a real identity with a lot of like the science fiction elements. And I think the people, like, yeah, it looks from like it's from 2001, but like I think in that kind of like retro way, like it looks very interesting. It has a lot of the thing that Mars Needs Moms has of really, really bad humor. Mm-hmm. And it feels like they're trying to appeal to like a more American audience, because it was written by a story by Sakaguchi, sorry, and a lot of like the Final Fantasy team, but it was written by two Americans, so like there's kind of a weird like lost in translation effect going on there. But it's really fascinating. I will say it is a really weird movie. It's fascinating to me as someone who has played some of the Final Fantasy games, but not a ton of them, how this tries to kind of like capture this sort of like essence of Final Fantasy, and it doesn't entirely get there, but there's elements in this that I kind of find really, really interesting and kind of beautiful and kind of engrossing in a way that I think something like Mars Needs Moms just completely misses by being a sci-fi movie. Like, this has got some stuff. It's got a bit of juice, but is also a kind of example of really bad voice direction. Because I mentioned all those cast. I think the cast really holds this movie back. Like, it really feels like they only wanted to get big A-list Hollywood actors, but didn't really know what to do with them, which is unfortunate. But it's really fascinating, and I just remain fascinated by video game adaptations, even in this way. Yeah, I don't know. Have either of you guys seen this, or are either of you guys Final Fantasy fans at all?
I have no knowledge of Final Fantasy other than the fact that it like exists. I know like the name Final Fantasy, but like I know nothing about Final Fantasy. Although I will say, when I was like a kid, I remember I used to like, I think from this, watch like cutscenes, like, or like little like scenes from this film. I don't know why I did that, like on YouTube. I just think I was like impressed with the animation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it. I think I just watched it because I thought like the animation looked cool, but it does sound cool. And I've always heard that like Final Fantasy and like stuff like that. Like I've always wanted to go down the rabbit hole, but just haven't.
Yeah, I have no real knowledge of Final Fantasy, but I do remember this movie coming out very vividly because I was a kid, and I remember the promotion around this movie was specifically about the Aki Ross character, who's like the lead character that Ming-Na Wen voices in that movie. They really wanted to promote the idea that that character wouldn't necessarily keep going in like other Final Fantasy movies, but like would be the first digital actress. That was Square's whole thing with that movie. It was like, we want to use Aki Ross in like other movies, but be able to like adjust her, like actually make her like a performer and other things, and like wanted to sell it. They put her in Maxim, like in a bikini.
Oh, huh. That is really bizarre.
Yeah, I remember all this very vividly as a young kid and being like, they're trying to like make a cartoon an actress, and then this movie bombed horribly, so they never really moved forward with that. But that is fascinating that was their goal, was like, we're gonna make basically like the weird Al Pacino movie Simone with a one, where like that's a movie about Al Pacino creating like a digital virtual actress to try and sell. It's like, no, this is a real starlet, a Hollywood like starlet thing. They try to do that in real life, and it just like completely crumbled in their face. I find that incredibly interesting, but I have not seen the film.
Yeah, that is really fascinating. I will just say, like, every Final Fantasy story is basically every game is a different story, and this one, I think, like, would not really give you a great sense of what those games are like, which I think, again, is fascinating and also is a problem with the movie itself. But yeah, a fascinating relic of its time, nevertheless.
Well, to contrast that, I'm going to recommend a movie that I sincerely like without any kind of caveats to it necessarily, because I really wanted to like find something that I felt would be like an antithesis to Mars Needs Moms, and then it clicked for me with a movie that I saw when it originally came out and I rewatched earlier today. Richard Linklater's Apollo 10.5: A Space Age Childhood, which came out on Netflix in 2022, and is done in the sort of rotoscope style, which was referenced earlier. He did previously for like A Scanner Darkly and Waking Life, his very specific kind of like rotoscope style, which mirrors the mocap thing. But I think, like with Scanner Darkly or Waking Life, I think Apollo 10.5 does something very interesting with that concept, where it's about the character Stanley, who's this young boy living in like 1969 era Houston when like the moon landing is like building up. His father works for NASA, and it's very much autobiographical kind of look from Richard Linklater about his childhood also living in Houston in like the late 60s. And a lot of it is done with like, you know, showing off like this kid kind of interacting with people, specifically like his sisters and his parents and people around town, with this narration from Jack Black playing the adult Stanley. And while this is also going on, as he's like kind of reminiscing about things, there's kind of a story that sort of bookmarks things of like, Stanley presents like, well, I was actually an astronaut when I was 9. I was hired by NASA in the form of two agents coming to his playground, played by Zachary Levi and Glenn Powell.
Yeah, we love him.
Yeah. And they're both like, hey, look, we built the rockets a bit too small for Apollo 10.5, so we need a kid to pilot it. And it's like, why don't you do monkeys? It's like, I don't know, they have less of a grasp of the human language than you do. So we're gonna go ahead and get you, kid. So you see this kid basically like training to go into space and go into space. And it's very much like a movie about memory on a lot of levels. And I think the sort of rotoscope style works brilliantly for that, because there's a lot of footage of like, you know, these kids interacting, and it's all like this rotoscope style, but with like, oh, it looks like a, you know, 60s era suburban neighborhood, and these very specific things that Richard Linklater remembers about his childhood. Like, there's a lot of points where the kids will just be watching TV on like a classic 60s TV set, and you'll have rotoscoped versions of like them watching the old Dark Shadows soap opera show. Or like, my favorite is there's a whole sequence where like he goes up on like the various different TV shows that he watched, and he's like, yeah, people remember the big ones like Gilligan and stuff, but I remember the obscure one season wonder shows, and they're real shows that Richard Linklater just kind of rotoscopes over. And I think it's this fascinating movie about just like reminiscing about like nostalgia and childhood, but in a way that doesn't feel cloying. It just feels like that actual thing of like, I remember the specific point from when I was a kid, and that kind of like weird shine you put on everything with like the memory angle of it. Like, the rotoscoping does a brilliant job of kind of recreating that with stuff like I mentioned, like him watching TV, or them even like, they do that rotoscoping with like actual old NASA footage I've seen hundreds of times in documentaries.
Yeah.
And it just takes this new kind of form when you have it rotoscoped like this. It's incredibly fascinating. It's incredibly fun and endearing in its own way. A lot of like little bits, like I love the dad, who is like so well realized. It's like, that feels like a real dad that somebody fucking had. Like, all the little ticks, like, oh, in the old beer cans he would like take off the top and then put it inside, and every day I would fear, like, is he gonna swallow that fucking thing? Is this gonna be the day where my dad like chokes on that? Stuff like that, small little things like that are like exactly what like real nostalgia is to me. Not so much like, oh, I remember this TV show when I was a kid, or this or whatever. It's much more about like just specific kind of memory things that you really cling on to and you never really forget. And I think it's a beautiful exploration of that. I think it works even better than when I watched it previously, when I rewatched it today. I think it's very underrated in the Linklater catalog, and I hope more people watch it. Have you guys seen it?
Yeah, I mean, I saw that movie like when it came out. I watched it like the day it came out, I think, on Netflix. I mean, I'm a big Linklater guy, so I try to make everything he makes a priority. I really liked it when I saw it. I honestly don't remember it super well, just because I feel like I don't know, my memory's just getting worse or whatever. But once it like hits like the 3 year threshold, especially like on streaming movies, like I just sometimes have a hard time remembering them. But I
Mhm.
do remember liking it. I remember having a lot of the same sentiments that you did. Like it was like cool and inventive, and it had like all the like it feels very personal but grand and imaginative at the same time. He's a guy that I would like to see do more animation because he just does a really good job with that kind of stuff, or at least a unique job, I should say. I haven't seen Scanner Darkly in like forever, but um at least his animation movies are interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think this is a super underappreciated movie, and I feel like it is because it's a Netflix movie, and they just kind of like get released into like a vacuum, you
Yeah.
know. And I don't even think it has a physical release. Like Criterion hasn't done that yet, but like that would be kind of interesting maybe for them to do, because
Mhm.
I agree with you. Like I think this is a really really great movie, and a movie that really understands nostalgia, and that like I love that story he says about like the beer can things, and like he also kind of talks about how like people used to just throw them in the street and you would just like step on them, and it is this kind of like thing of like remembering your childhood but not going like, oh, wasn't the good old days, everything was great, where it's just this weird thing of like, why did we do that? That's such a dangerous thing. Like that was so
Yeah.
dangerous, but also
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
he has a fondness for it because it was his childhood. And like I agree, like some of the stuff where he is like reliving his childhood in this is it's a really beautiful way of depicting nostalgia, and just kind of like the specificity of like I love when he talks about the day of the moon landing, and how like how his family kind of watched that, and like it is really great. And like yeah, Linklater doing animation, like I watched The Scanner Darkly fairly recently, and I love that movie. I think it's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, Linklater's it's fascinating to see him do animation, but he manages to really like just make it really unique with that yeah, the rotoscoping, and just kind of like the interesting sort of like imaginative take on this like space story, like a great like contrast to Mars Needs Moms. I think it really is good. I would like to rewatch it at some point actually, because I think it is a super one of the most underappreciated movies I think from the past few years, I would say. Yeah.
For sure. But Adam, what's your recommendation?
My recommendation is also a movie that I sincerely like. So, because I just hated this so much that I just too much pain. So I just thought let's be positive and let's recommend something we like. I wanted to recommend Monster House, which I acknowledge is not a very obscure movie. I feel like it has a decent following, although I am shocked at how many people my age that I talk to, and whenever not that I bring it up literally every day of my life, but whenever it does come up, you'd be surprised how many people in my age group have not seen Monster House. Like, I think they know what it is, but even when I was a kid, I did suspect that like it was marketed in a way that wasn't very appealing towards kids. And I get it because a lot of kids are easily scared when it comes to like horror movies, and it's really hard to market like a kind of quasi horror animated family film. Like I think that's just like a lot of like cross sections of genre that it could be off-putting to some. And I from what I remember, the marketing campaign for this wasn't particularly strong in the first place. But it's really fun, it's really inventive, and the main reason why I recommended it is because it is a mocap movie that kind of goes to what I was saying about how I wish if they ever did bring it back, there wouldn't be such an emphasis on trying to capture the likeness of whatever actor is portraying said character, and more so just like letting the film do the talking, like let the characters be who they are, like let the aesthetic be present. And I think that's something very present in Monster House, is that like all the characters are just so like, it's just like, I don't know, like so bony and like twig figure, like almost like kind of like their motion or like stop motion animation, but like in a motion capture. It's so hard to explain unless you've seen it. But they're all just so skinny and frail, and like it has such a, like a cool like gothic yet midwestern vibe to it that I've always loved. I dragged my mom to see this when I was like 8 years old, I think, and I really loved it when I was a kid. And the motion capture work, if you want to like talk about like a sense of place and like having a location that feels tangible, and like you can like it feels like you can walk into every room in that house and you'll find a different thing. This is a movie that does that in spades. It is so inventive in that way. Um, Not necessarily like a perfect movie or anything, but just like a super, super fun one. I highly recommend watching it around like the holiday or the Halloween season, because it's just so much fun. I have fond memories of sitting, like not only seeing this in theaters, but also like subsequent Halloweens watching it like on my living room floor, eating Halloween candy. Uh, yeah, I love this movie.
Yeah, I saw this actually theatrically. Because my sisters really wanted to see it, and I was kind of curious about it, but I was like, I don't know, I'm a bit older at this point. I'm like, am I gonna like really have that much interest in this cartoon? I remember it surprising me quite a bit that I actually liked it way more than I expected. I think a big part of that, if you look at the credits, is that this movie is co-written by Dan Harmon,
Oh wow.
which is what's really interested me in revisiting it. Like him and Rob Schraub, who did Community as well, and like a bunch of other collaborations with Dan Harmon. It's also directed by Gil Keenan, who I really was rooting for at a certain point because this is his first movie, but he also goes on to make stuff like City of Ember and then the really bad Poltergeist remake, and then really hitches his wagon to Jason Reitman by co-writing the Ghostbusters Afterlife and then directing Frozen Empire.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's had an interesting career as well, but yeah, I remember kind of like, especially, I really liked the twist that happens. I won't spoil it, I guess, if you haven't seen it, but the whole kind of reveal of like why the house is monstrous, I found weirdly like very creative and fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, from my memory. But yeah, Bryan, have you seen this one?
Yeah, I think similar to you, Adam. Like I grew up like watching this a lot. It was like always on like TV, I feel like, and I have a lot of nostalgia for it. And it's not one I've revisited as an adult. I'm going to put it on my list for like when it gets to the fall, because like I just remember I loved just the vibes of this movie. I think Thomas, you and I have talked a lot about like sort of like entry level horror movies for kids or for like younger people, and like as much as I didn't like scary movies as a kid, I feel like this was kind of like the one movie that I would like allow myself to watch because it was a bit more like fun and like I don't know, it felt like this kind of, it is about a house, but like kind of like a haunted house kind of movie. It was poppy, it was really fun, and like yeah, I really would like to revisit it this year, and especially yeah, I think like just I would love for more movies to be like this, just more like horror movies that are kind of spooky rather than like scary necessarily for kids. But I definitely remember like I have a lot of memories of watching this like late nights on TV with like a bunch of candy and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm going to revisit it at some point soon. I remember really loving it.
By the way, very appropriate also that you ended up picking this, Adam, because executive producer on this movie, Robert Zemeckis.
Oh wow.
And
Yeah.
and it was kind of done through like his Image Movers thing, and feels like we mentioned the horror movie angle. Like Zemeckis was for most of his production stuff at this time was like horror stuff, like the 13 Ghosts remake, stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Like kind of like the Dark Castle movies in particular, the Haunted House on Haunted Hill remake, stuff like that. That I feel like would work perfectly for like the motion capture. This feels closest, I think, to him kind of using that spooky style that like he did, even with like the Tales from the Crypt show, which he produced as well. Kind of like having that spooky angle with the motion capture. But he's like, you know what's really spooky? Martians eating moms. That's just really, really spooky.
They could have leaned into it. It was all there for them, but they didn't want to. Yeah, I think that it's a perfect entryway for younger viewers, or even just people that don't necessarily want something too spooky around that time of the year, I think it's a perfect option for them. So
Really good, yeah, gateway horror movie. I very much agree with that.
yeah.
Yes. But let's repeat our titles for everybody out there in case you want to add them to your watch lists, Brian.
Yes, I had from 2001, Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within.
And I had the 2022 Richard Linklater film, currently on Netflix for you to stream, Apollo 10.5: A Space Age Childhood.
And I had, I want to say 2006, Monster House, directed by Gil Keenan. And last time I watched it, it was on Netflix. Your mileage may vary because things leave so quickly on there.
Yes, it's ephemeral. The Netflix kind of deal. But yes, on that note, we should start wrapping things up here. We want to thank some people. We want to thank Burial Grid for our music for the show. Purchase this music at burialgrid.com. Thanks to Michelle Kyle for our artwork. Find her at MichKyle96 over on Twitter. And thanks to our supporters on Patreon, patreon.com/cinema2letter, where for just $1 a month, you all get access to bonus stuff we do every month. Like, for example, around this time, we're at the end of July, so you would have hopefully heard our Back to the Future full franchise that would have come out recently. I think coming soon will be a review roundup about some of the July releases, like Superman, amongst other things. And also, you should be able to watch our video rabbit hole, in which I forced Brian to watch one of the worst videos he's ever watched in the middle of that. Brian,
God,
the breaks down.
I forgot about that until now.
You blacked it out. You blacked it out because you didn't really want to remember it. Yes.
A better film than Mars Needs Moms, that video that we watched.
Oh, wow.
You'll have to become a patron to find out what that is. But that for we also want to have one other person to thank. We have to thank Adam, our guest.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Adam. Really appreciate it. Plug yourself. Where can people find you on the internet if you wish to be found out there?
Oh, absolutely. I really do thank you guys. I know I was joking, but I did have a great time, even though we watched this movie. I'm happy to come on and talk to you anytime. You guys can follow me on well, first of all, my podcast, Films for Breakfast. It's on all the platforms: Spotify, Apple, Pocket Casts, anywhere you can find pods, we're on it. My website, filmsforbreakfast.com. I also have written reviews on there. Me and my writer Kate, we try to cover as many movies as we can. And also, I guess if you want to follow me personally, I'm on Instagram, Letterboxd, kind of on Blue Sky and Threads, although I don't really post ever. I'm just kind of there to scroll for 20 minutes a day and then I log off. So you can follow me there at Adam Not Sandler. Yeah, I think that's about it for me.
Well, I should mention that I have guested on Films for Breakfast previously.
Yes.
We did an episode about The Drop, and if things go right, I should be on soon again. I'm scheduled to be on for your Naked Gun episode,
yes,
which I'm very curious to do.
Absolutely. I do have that in the books, and thank you for reminding me about that, because I need to start booking other people for August, but I'm so thankful that I have you already for August, because it's creeping up on us. Yeah, I cannot wait to talk about that movie.
Yeah, for sure. It's a fun show, Films for Breakfast. It wasn't even episodes I'm not on, and they're quite good.
Thank you, Matt.
Well, you can follow our own operation. If we're on some kind of hell site, we'll be there at cinema2letter. And you can find me specifically on Blue Sky and Letterboxd as at Not the Who's Tommy. And also, I should shout out, this happened earlier this month, but friend of the show, Tori DePina, who hosts the Marco Polo show on Patreon with me about Adult Swim stuff. We were guests on Siobhan and Marcelo, friends of the show. They have a Richard Kelly podcast called Have a Nice Apodcalypse. I've been on there multiple times, but I was recently on an episode where we talked about all the movies produced by Darko Entertainment, Richard Kelly's production company. All 11 movies. And I said it there, and I'll say it again. As much as we talked about Mars Needs Moms being quite bad, that is the worst time I've ever had prepping for a podcast. In terms of just some of the worst movies I've ever watched for that. But we had a fun time, a very long time, talking about all of those movies. So listen to that on the Talk Film Society feed. And one quick other thing, if you're listening to this on the day it's released, you might be able to come over to Tampa Bay Comic Con, where I will be on some panels this year. I'm not doing the Dragon Con thing this year due to some travel plans in September, so I decided, like, you know what, let's try and do another convention. And I'm going to be doing, like I said, the Tampa Bay Comic Con, which is that first weekend of August 1st through the 3rd. And I'll be doing a bunch of panels. If you follow our social medias at Cinema Number 2 Letter or myself at Not the Who's Tommy, I have posted my planned panel schedule over there if you want specifics. But I'll be doing about 7 different panels, a couple on the 1st and many on the 2nd. So if you're in the Tampa Bay area and you're going to be attending, you might be able to see me do panels on stuff like Severance, David Lynch, some bad sci-fi movies from 1995, The Bride of Frankenstein, A24, Andor Season 2, and an interesting panel I'm very excited about, was 1985 the greatest year in movies? So check the panel app schedule, you'll be able to find some of that, and like I said, on my social medias, I've posted the specific schedule and the rooms that all the panels are in, so if you're coming to the con, please see one of my panels and come say hi.
Yeah, and for me, you can mainly just find me on Letterboxd these days. I've been, like, maybe thinking of using Blue Sky a bit more, but I don't know. We'll see how that goes at all. But for now, you can just follow me on Letterboxd at my name. So, yeah.
And for more of the show, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or other podcasting platforms. If you're listening on Talk Film Society, our great podcast network, listen to all the other great shows on there, like Have a Nice Apodcalypse, amongst other things. And you can also dig into the archives in our Podbean main feed for the past, 9 seasons of Cinema to the Letter. All the old double-edged double bill stuff is all up there for you to listen to. And everything else, if you can't support us on the Patreon, that's cool. Money can be tight for people, but the totally free way to help us out is to rate, review, or simply share the show around to give us more visibility, because Bryan and I are 2 lost boys without moms to help us. Our moms were taken by Martians. We need some sort of parental guidance in this world. But on that note, we should tease that next time we're talking about, I think, a better movie.
Oh, we're back.
Perhaps.
We're so back.
Perhaps, yes, a much better movie. From the ashes after the fire of Mars Eats Moms, we will rise next week for, speaking of M's, our M for Masterpiece pick, where we'll be talking about Hayao Miyazaki's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, which we're both very excited to talk about. Bryan, you're a big Hayao Miyazaki fan. You insisted we had to cover at least one Studio Ghibli movie on here, and you twisted my arm because, I have to talk about a Studio Ghibli movie. I have to be enchanted.
Oh no, you have to watch some of the greatest animated films of all time.
Look, I'm too busy watching Mars Needs Moms to do that, okay, Bryan?
Just on repeat, just like...
on repeat. But you're excited, obviously, for some Miyazaki, right?
Oh, absolutely. I said some of the greatest animated films, and you could literally... It could be any of them. We could have covered any of them, but I think specifically Nausicaa, it'll be really fun to talk about that movie and how strange that movie is and how beautiful it is. And I think why Miyazaki is maybe the reason why I love animation as much as I do. And, not to spoil it, but it's in the title of the episode. It is a masterpiece. So, yeah, I'm very, very excited.
And Adam, are you a fan in general of Miyazaki, and particularly of this movie of his?
I love Miyazaki. I'm trying my damnedest to go to just about every re-release I can of his films. I did go to the Princess Mononoke IMAX re-release this year, which was incredible. Still my favorite of his work, although Spirited Away and Totoro are right up there. Nausicaa, I will shut up my old podcast, Aggressively Okay. We, during the pandemic, tried to do like a bracket for just about anything you can imagine each week. And 1 week in like June, like right in the thick of it, we did a Miyazaki bracket, and it was very enlightening because I got to go through the rabbit hole of blind spots. And it was funny because I felt like depending on the order of which you watched Princess Mononoke or Nausicaa, whichever one you watched first you preferred, at least in my experience, because I had my co-host and my guest for that pod, like the one that watched Princess Mononoke first, and I both preferred that movie, but then my co-host Joe watched Nausicaa first and preferred that because they are very thematically similar. Both are great,
True.
and I do love Nausicaa, but I do prefer Princess Mononoke. But the correct answer is that there's no bad Miyazaki movie because they're
Absolutely.
all awesome
Yeah.
and unique, and I would love to see them all in theaters.
Yes, and then Miyazaki, if you told him that, would spit in your face and say you're a mistake. Put his cigarette out in your eye and say "fuck you."
if he saw Mars Needs Moms, I can only imagine
Oh
his reaction.
God. What is that quote? This is an abomination to humanity or something like that.
The animation was a mistake.
My old oh, I don't know if it's like altered from that, but yeah, I remember when I was like on Tumblr as a teenager, like the one that did the rounds on Tumblr was anime was a mistake. It just like
Yep,
him,
that
like,
one.
completely frustrated.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's such a funny pull. Like it's been in my camera roll forever.
Well, we'll talk about Miyazaki and all that stuff next week, but until then, everybody, we're gonna wave goodbye to you, but now we've become horrible motion capture zombies, so it's not gonna be pleasant. But luckily, you can't see our faces. Goodbye!